Only you got about 30 seconds. All right, everybody. Welcome to tonight's board meeting. I just want to confirm we are streaming live online, so everyone is aware. And prior to this meeting, we did have a reception and tour of the new facilities we sit in. So I will call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. A note for the audience, Board Chair Maureen Wolf is on an important call this evening, actually advocating for school funding, but she will be with us shortly. So first, Dr. Ricky Smith, are there any changes to the agenda? There are none. All right, board members, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion was made and seconded. I don't know if folks could hear that online, but the second was Director Emerson. And with that, the motion has been made and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, say nay. Director Emerson? Aye. She says aye. Director Fox? Aye. Director Zerschmied?
Aye.
And I will vote aye for a vote of 4-0. The consent agenda is adopted. And with that, I will hand it over for recognition and good news to Director Tracy Rose.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Nesty, and I'm the Bond Support Administrator for Tigard-Tualatin, helping to manage and oversee all the projects that are happening across the district, including the project that we're sitting in right now that's been recently completed, Tualatin Middle School. And I want to recognize a whole bunch of people that have been invaluable to this project coming to fruition. And so I'd like to invite a handful of people up. If you just join me, can I please have Sean Christensen, Rebecca Grant, Levi Patterson, Jennifer McDonald, Jose Vergara, Kevin Montag, and anybody on the Tualatin staff. Come on up, please. All of you to be recognized. Right up front, right up here with me. What a great looking group this is. Fantastic. So as you are probably aware, this beautiful new building, like I said, came to fruition through the generosity of our 2016 bond, and couldn't be more excited about how this building has turned out. And it didn't happen by chance. It happened because of a lot of hard work and effort and blood, sweat, and tears on behalf of a lot of people. And so I'm really excited to be able to take the opportunity to recognize these folks. First and foremost, the Tualatin staff, and we've only got a fraction of them here right now, but the Tualatin staff has demonstrated truly incredible grit and perseverance over the last 3 years. And when we said goodbye to the Tualatin staff at the end of the school year in 2019 and waved goodbye and started to demolish this building, they spent the next school year in a temporary facility, Templeton Elementary, and 28 portable classrooms that sat on the field down below where we're standing right now. And that was not an ideal situation for 1,100 middle schoolers to be in, nor the 75 or so staff members. And the grit and perseverance that all of you demonstrated was amazing. You know, I know that when kids run into hard problems, we ask them to demonstrate grit and perseverance. And all of you did that so amazingly, staying kid focused, and just couldn't be any more proud of the Tualatin staff. So thank you. They were under the leadership of Gwen Stover and Andrew Curl, most recently is the assistant principal and principal here at Tualatin. I want to thank them. And I also want to take the opportunity to thank Levi Patterson and Rebecca Grant from the IBI Architect Group, who listened to feedback. Rebecca, if you could wave, and Levi, right next to her, took the vision that they heard from the district and turned it into a reality. So thank you for that. On the district side, we had a ton of people being involved in stewarding funds and making difficult decisions when we need to make reductions. And so there's a bond leadership team that includes David Moore to my left, Darren Bernard to my left, Kevin Montag, who's in my shadow here, overshadowing me, maybe would be a better way to say it, and Sarah Merezbada, Marianne Escriba, lots of folks who have participated and really helped this project come to fruition. I want to thank all of them for their hard work. The brains of the operation is our project manager, Sean Christensen, and the Tualatin staff. They are rightfully so giving her a round of applause, because detail-oriented and helpful, and has jumped in with both feet, basically become part of the staff. And you know, just can't imagine having done this project with any other project manager. Sean has been just absolutely tremendous. And before I let these folks go, I want to have two special recognitions for two folks that really, in my estimation, have been really the heartbeat of the project. And that's Jennifer Mcdonald and Jose Vergara. Head secretary and head custodian, and broad shoulders. When any of these folks have a crisis, it becomes their crisis. When it's time to demolish a 60-year-old building and move everything into a temporary location, there were two people at the tip of that sword taking care of all the details. And I just, I'm proud to have worked with the two of you. It's been just an amazing experience. I really appreciate your hard work, the work ethic, and I know the Tualatin staff just thinks so highly of you. So I appreciate all of those efforts. So thanks for the opportunity. This building is amazing. The last part of the project to be completed is the new turf field, which will be to my right down below. It's going to be a new addition that we're really excited about, and can't wait for students to return en masse 5 days a week in the fall. I see a lot of head shaking, and just one big last round of applause to all these folks for all their efforts. Thank you. Oh, we're going to get some pictures.
I thought you were going to sing for us or something. All right, board members, do you have any comments or questions for Mr. Nessie or the staff?
I just want to say, y'all look like you're about to do like the chorus lines. So, you know, feel free. No, I just want to say thank you for putting up with really difficult circumstances for the last year and a half. And this fabulous building, you deserve it. So enjoy it and never have to turn your lights on because there's so much natural light, and do great things for students here. And thank you.
Hi. I also want to thank you. I'm actually your neighbor down the street, and so I've come up here many times and walked around the old track. I just want to thank you all too. But I also want to ask you, what's your favorite thing about? If you could just tell me what one of your favorite things is about the building, I'd love to hear. Wide hallways, indoor bathrooms. That's a plus. Not being affordable. You said you had been in one for 7 years. Is that how many years? 17 years. Wow. Okay. That's awesome. Anybody else? Yes. Yes. I'll do that before it wears off. All right. Well, thank you all.
I'm thinking that some of you here might have been on the design team too as staff. So thank you for the many, many meetings that you put in to come up with these great ideas that got put into place. And I am very thrilled for you to have this space. So enjoy it and teach those kiddos.
I just want to say I went to Tualatin, and I remember when I was in 8th grade and we started the process, and they actually had multiple meetings to include student voice, and I presented in front of Miss Waddell, and I remember studying Miss Waddell's portables and hearing about the rats. It related to the plague that we were studying, so yeah, so I'm really glad that I get to be in this building and see it come to fruition. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to honor, speaking of Mrs. Waddell, she was telling me about, you might not be able to see it on the live stream, but there's a piece of the old gym floor leaning against the sidewall that's signed not just by current staff, but also former staff. And apparently there's even a staff member who taught here back in the 1980s, retired in the 80s, 85, and came back because they were so proud of their experience here that they wanted their name on the gym floor. So I think that speaks to the sense of community that's been built. As Principal Curl said before the tour, you all deserve this building as teachers, and we are very grateful for you. So thank you for being here. One more round of applause for them, and we'll transition. All right. We will now move to student representative reports. And Emily from Tualatin High School, you're at the far end of the table, so we will kick off with you.
Is it working? Okay. Not a lot are happening. We have 3.5 weeks left of school. 2.5 weeks left of school. So classes are 3.5. Oh, because you're graduating. Yeah, weeks left of school. We had track stay at Oregon City on Friday and Saturday. And this week we are having a fun drive for period products. So the entire week. And then on Friday, if students donate, they will get cookies. And that's with the period chapter at Tualatin High School.
I don't have much else to add. For seniors, we only have 2 weeks left. I think this was the last Monday in person for any hybrid students. So that is exciting, sad, both at the same time. Otherwise, I think this Wednesday, students have the opportunity to go pick up their cords. If they have any cords for graduation. And I don't really have anything else.
I should have introduced, that was Rowan from Tigard High School, our other student representative. And we will get to resolutions about those folks later in the agenda. But for now, we're going to move on to Superintendent and Board Communication. Dr. Ricky Smith, the floor is yours.
Okay, there we go. All right. Thank you so much, Vice Chair Bowman. My comments this evening begin with expressing how excited it is to be able to return to in-person meetings again this evening, where we can once again welcome the community that we serve. And it is especially fitting to host this first in-person board meeting in one of our recently completed bond projects, Tualatin Middle School. Earlier this evening, we had a small celebration to celebrate the completion of this facility, and we were joined by several of the key stakeholders that have brought this building into reality. And they include our bond election committee, our long-term facilities planning committee, our bond oversight committee, and a small but mighty group of retired Tualatin teachers. We wanted to extend a special thank you to Architects IBI Group for their beautiful design of this building, and contractors Trippett Willman for the finished product that we all are enjoying this evening. Joining us today from IBI Group is Rebecca Stucker and Tim McCullough. If you're here, please raise your hands. We can see you. Nope. Okay, they've moved on. I also share our gratitude for the continued stewardship of our partners with Days CPM, Debbie Pearson, and Sean Christensen, who have been instrumental in this project. As always, profound gratitude to our community at large for their support of the current bond that made this possible. And just a really quick shout out this evening to our Tigard SROs, Officer Imus, who serves Tualatin, and Officer Nunn, Tigard High School. Welcome. We're glad that you're here. And if you want to raise your hands, gentlemen, or you, yep, there they are in the back. Great. We appreciate you being here. And it has been a long and challenging journey from our last meeting in person on March 12th, 2020 to today. And this is just the beginning of a return to full in-person district operations beginning in the fall. As I shared at our last board meeting, one of my favorite times, this is one of my favorite times of year to have the opportunity to highlight some of our outstanding students in Tigard-Tualatin School District. So two this evening that have been highlighted in recent KGW stories are Jake Deering, a Tualatin High School sophomore, a current member of this year's varsity men's golf team, despite the fact that he has struggled with significant physical challenges his entire life. Jake has faced each challenge head on, never giving up when things were hard, always seeking to motivate others. Jake shared, show people what you can do. Don't be afraid to try everything you can. Have fun, you only live once. He epitomizes that in living his life to the fullest. And as many of you know, I would be remiss not to highlight Ryan Lumbar, a Tualatin 8th grade student who is changing the world one painting at a time. Her current work is in support of marginalized communities, encouraging our community at large to be accepting, kind, and do good works that create a community of care for all. 100% of the proceeds from the sale of her posters go to Pack the Pride program to ensure families and students don't go hungry. Ryan would like to see your posters all across America so that all students feel safe and accepted. And I end my remarks this evening, board, with a quote from Dr. Lisa Del Pitt, a favorite of mine, a nationally recognized scholar and education leader whose body of research has focused on best practices for closing opportunity to learn gaps for students. She notes the power to close gaps as well as stretch student achievement rests in teachers as warm demanders who expect a great deal of their students, convincing them of their own brilliance and helping them reach their full potential in a welcoming yet structured and disciplined environment. Given the recent interest of some in our community in the website Portland Child Soldiers, it is difficult for me this evening to respond to an unsubstantiated media story based on anonymous sources where the author chose not to reach out to the district, as other media outlets typically do, to verify this information. I will, however, confirm that the Tigard-Tualatin School District is and will continue to practice culturally responsive teaching, also known as CRT, which simply means our teachers are warm demanders, with the dedication and focus that every child that they serve has value and worth, and strive to provide an equitable opportunity to be academically and socially responsible. This is the obligation of a public school system, and that is the mission of the Tigard-Tualatin School District, to educate every child. This evening's first read of the board's equity policy affirms that commitment and holds the office of the superintendent, central office operations, our school administrators, and teachers accountable to not just close opportunity gaps for some, but to stretch those students who are advanced learners so that all will be learning at their rate and level. And that's what's addressed in the classroom instruction. My job and the standards for which each of you board hold me responsible is to ensure that every child that walks through our doors is successful and has every opportunity to excel. To sacrifice the advancement of any student, to advance our dedication to equitable outcomes is, in my opinion, the definition of counterintuitive. And as a reminder to our community here and our community that has joined us this evening, if any TTSD student is impacted by teaching that has left them feeling ashamed or uncomfortable in any way, I ask you to bring it to your students' principal's attention immediately, as that will not be tolerated. You can anticipate that they will work with you, answer any questions, or address any concerns you have. Among the many board policies that direct and guide our work with students, policy GBCG, staff conduct and responsibility, leads with this statement: essential to the success of district operations and the instructional program are the following specific responsibilities, of which there are 8, which will be required of all personnel. And the first one is placing the needs and welfare of students first. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ricky Smith. Very well said. So with that, board members, now is board member reports. So who would like to go first? Director Emerson, Director Fox, Director Zerschmied.
Am I dealing with you guys? So I just wanted to reiterate what Dr. Ricky Smith said about how amazingly cool it is to be back in person and seeing all of your faces again. It has been so strange to be sitting at my computer holding a board meeting for the last year and a bit. And this is what it's supposed to be. And so thank you all for coming tonight, and let's keep going and doing great things. In terms of a report, I just wanted to state 2 weeks ago was Avid's graduation, which was a virtual event, and it was amazing. I don't know how many of my fellow board members, Karen was there as well. It was such a neat event. It's always an inspiring event to see these kids graduating, and it makes me realize that we are just like a week away from graduation weekend, and I don't know quite where the school year has gone. So yeah, it's the silly season, but it's going to be fun. So that's it.
Just a couple notes. First, I do want to note we've got at least one graduate from that Avid ceremony in the audience that I wanted to shout out to. I also wanted to recognize that our 3 new incoming board members are here with us this evening, and I want to congratulate them, and also all the folks who put their names out there and decided to run for the school board. Not an easy thing to do, so thanks to the new board members for being with us tonight. Along the lines of what Dr. Ricky Smith mentioned earlier, I do feel an obligation as a board member to say that Dr. Ricky Smith and her cabinet implements board policies, and it is not appropriate for people to target and threaten cabinet members and administrators based on actions that the board has taken. The board welcomes criticisms and comments via email, but targeting cabinet members, which we have seen, is not appropriate. And I just wanted to make that clear. And then on a happier note, some of us were able to attend the Art Rutkin Elementary School groundbreaking ceremony, which was a pretty cool thing for me. As someone who came through this district, my middle school assistant principal, Mr. Nessie, was the MC. School board members who were school board members when I was in elementary school were there, and members of Mr. Rutkin's family were also there in attendance at the ceremony. And it was a pretty cool example of community, much like our ceremony this evening. So very soon we'll be welcoming children into our Rutkin Elementary School, and it was great to be up there. Last chance, directors. Okay. All right. With that, we're going to move to public comment. So we received, I believe, 19 folks who indicated they would like to provide public comment at tonight's meeting. And I wanted to be upfront. The policy for public comment is we're going to allow 30 minutes of public comment during this section. And then after the last person within that 30 minutes has finished their remarks, we're going to stop public comment. And then at the end of the board meeting, if folks are still here and would like to provide public comment, they will be given the opportunity to do so. They may also submit their remarks in writing to Patty Roberts, our executive assistant, and those will be reflected in the minutes of the meeting. Some rules for public comment, so we're all on the same page. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. I'm going to ask Director Zershmi to be my timer to make sure we are fair for everyone. Speakers are allowed to offer objective criticism of district operations and programs, but the board will not hear complaints nor praise concerning any specific district personnel. So if I do hear a name used in public comments, I will interrupt you and ask you to stop. Yeah, okay, with that, did I miss anything, Director Zershmi or Dr. Ricky Smith? Oh yes, and when you start your remarks, please include your name or a title that identifies you for the public record. Okay, with that, I'm going to call up our first public comment. I'll note that it's 6:55, so at 6:25, we will move on. First public comment is Tony Goyburn. Mr. Goyburn? Perfect. There's a microphone on the table. You'll just need to press the power button until it's green, and that means you're live.
Thank you. I'm going to moderate my comments because tonight seems to be more of a celebration of being in this beautiful, fantastic building and everybody that participated in making this so. I have 3 children in this district. I had one at Alberta Ryder and one at this school that didn't actually get to go to this school, that participated sort of in the little cubicle buildings out there, and one that did part of that and then went to was a freshman at Tualatin High School. And so those conferences in the portables, that was a wonderful dance of organizational skills by the school. So my 2 children that are going to be here next year are really, really excited, and I'm really, and this is a fantastic facility, having experienced the other one, which we'll never speak of again, of the whole building, and especially the gym. I'll just make a general comment because, like I said, this seems like a celebratory night. I really want to make sure that my voice and voices like mine are heard, that the school board and the superintendent's office isn't spending a huge amount of resources on programs and systems that are for students whose demographics in the school districts are very small. I'm all for helping people achieve. I support all kinds of people. It doesn't matter what their skin color is, what their religious preference is. But it seems like there is a push to create programs for very, very, very small group of people in our school district. And I would oppose that because I'll invoke the Starfleet Federation, Dr. Spock's words, that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. The few have a lot of needs, but we're a school district of a majority of us are white. We're white people. We don't see ourselves as racist. We don't see ourselves as sexist. We don't see ourselves as anything but contributing members of society. And my 3 little kids don't understand any of that you guys are talking about at school. They don't understand any of that that's in the media. They don't. They get up in the morning and they talk to all their friends as if they're just their friends. They don't care what color they are. They don't care what color their hair is. They don't care about any of that. And if the school district is going to create programs that emphasizes special treatment for people, I would be opposed to that. I don't know what the outcome of some of these programs that you're wanting to create or that you are creating.
That's your time.
Is your outcome equality or equality of outcome?
And
or
that's your time, sir. I'm
equity of
gonna have to
outcome.
cut you
So-
off there. Thank you. And per board policy, the board will not be responding to public comments that we received this evening. Next on the public comment list is Jessica Reiser.
That better? Hi, guys. My name is Jessica Reiser. I am a Tualatin High School mom, and I wanted to bring a parent's perspective to the board tonight of the article that was released in the City Journal this past week. I am familiar with your equity team. I've served on some committees with them. And I'll note that they start nearly every meeting they host with reading the art community. And you guys are certainly familiar with those concepts, but if not everyone here is, it's in the materials for the board meeting tonight. And I think my experience with your equity team is the art of community. And what have I seen them teaching our children? At the elementary school level, a simplified version of the art of community. I've seen them focus on teaching our children not to make assumptions about one another, to ask questions about each other, to be active listeners, to develop all of those life skills that we want all of our children to have and that all of our children benefit from. I'll be honest with you, at the high school level, I haven't seen much programming. And I actually don't think that's a reflection of the lack of initiative or effort from the equity department's group. I think it's reflective of the fact that they really are trying to be slow and thoughtful and responsive while they develop the materials and the programming for the equity efforts in our district. And so that's my experience with your equity team, our equity team in the district. And so then to read this article this past week was just really mind-boggling to me, to see them accused of teaching hatred of America and racism against white people, and to say that they're creating a school to radicalism pipeline. I have to tell you, my experience with them could not be further from those statements. And so I just want to send a thank you to them, a thank you to for their efforts, a thank you for persevering, because I will tell you as a parent, I don't think they deserved a word of what was written about them. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, next up. Yes, Director Zerschmied would like me to remind folks giving public comment that when there's 1 minute left, she will lift her phone up and wave it, just so you know you have 1 minute remaining on your remarks. Next up, we have Aaron Bettis.
Okay, sorry. Like you said, my name is Aaron Bettis. I had a more detailed statement prepared, trying to explain to you why so many parents are pulling their kids from the schools. I'll mention a little bit. It's because of your lack of focus on academic excellence, elimination of advanced classes, most recently elimination of math, advanced math 7 for 6th graders at the middle school. Now it's impossible for my son to finish the IB calculus program. Also a focus on identity politics. My kids' value is based on their skin color, their sexuality, and their gender, and the oppression they feel in school, the oppression of their ideas. Their ideas are not valuable because they're not one of the protected minorities. Instead of giving you the rest of that statement, because you mentioned the article in the City Journal magazine, If it's not true, I challenge you to release the documents to the public that the author references so that we can all see. I hope that they're false. I would like to see that for myself. That's my statement for you.
All right, next up on public comment is Dylan McCann.
There we go. Okay. Again, Dylan McCann. I teach 7th grade here at Tualatin. Pride. That is what I feel when I speak of the work that we are doing here at TTSD. When I come to my classroom each day, I get to feel that pride in knowing that I am working in a district that hears those voices that have been silenced over the generations. It's not about guilt or feeling bad about the privilege that I've had over the course of my life, but it's about seeing how our systems have not been set up for the success of all of my students and what we can do to change them. We live in a society that has been designed and cultivated to ensure the success of one demographic more than others. If we were to walk into any classroom in this district and look at the population of students, then compare it to the demographics of the teachers in front of them, the administrators leading them, and all of you sitting here making decisions that affect them, the representation of our students of color is lacking. Though it may not have been from a conscious series of decisions being made, it does not change the fact that our students of color are being pushed through a system that is not designed for their success. So it's up to us as their white allies to look at this imbalance and be representatives for their voices. Last year, I was co-leading one of our affinity groups. I made a promise to my students that I would use my voice to stand up for them when their voices were silenced by the system. We were on our trip to OSU to learn about the cultural heritage of the school and community. While on the bus, an issue arose between the students and the bus driver who was white and male. His approach in addressing the students came across as threatening and mean, and the students felt like their voices were not heard and the culture was not respected. Without our focus on culturally responsive teaching and the equity work in our district, it would have been very easy to dismiss this as just another situation to forget and let go. But I made a promise to my students that I would see them and use my privileged voice to stand for them. I heard my students in order to better understand their perspectives and engage in dialogue with the bus driver. Though it wasn't comfortable for me to stand up and speak to the driver about how my students felt and how the message was received by them, I remembered how uncomfortable it must have felt for my students to be shut down for being themselves. As a result of my conversation with them and with the bus driver, my students felt like their voices were heard, and it let them know that there are people in this school that will stand with them. The ride home was significantly different. There was space allowed for the students to interact in a way that was culturally normal while maintaining safety precautions on the bus. The work we do around this, the more with our students know they have allies and know that they are working for a chance of success. The fact that our district is focusing on recognizing and thinking critically about those systems means that we are telling our students that they matter, because they do. So many of them are falling through the cracks in our traditional education system. We as a district have declared that all of our students and community members that we are not okay with any of us falling through the cracks, and we will rally around our members that need us. We will not settle for going back to the way it was, because the way it was wasn't working. That is why I feel pride, because you as a school board and we as a community are telling our marginalized members they matter, and we will stand with them.
All right. Thank you very much. Next public comment is from Michael Rooney.
Good evening. My name is Mike Rooney, and I teach 8th grade at Tualatin Middle School. Before joining TTSD in 2018, I taught high school in Portland and Southern Oregon. For the past 3 years, I've participated as a member of the Equity Leadership Team at Tualatin. The Equity Leadership Team is made up of teachers and staff who meet weekly to consider data, reflect on our practice, and provide support for professional development at Tualatin. Equity work at Tualatin is based upon building our capacity as a school community to understand and dismantle the barriers to learning for all students. At the core of our equity work is the concept of culturally responsive education, sometimes referred to as CRT. I have taught for more than 20 years in a variety of schools and communities. I've tried a multitude of approaches to reach students who strive to make meaning out of the information that bombards them in school every day. A few things have always been true. Teachers set the tone for learning in the classroom, and all students benefit from good teaching. The culturally responsive educator approach emphasizes the need to increase students' capacity to process information and become effective learners. That is a good outcome that benefits everyone. If our schools do not foster independent learners, then we cannot expect to close the gap between those who make meaning out of the information and those who simply fill in the blanks and check the boxes to earn a passing grade. We cannot afford to ignore the data that continues to expose who is not thriving and how we are failing them. The school has a responsibility to provide an environment that is both physically and intellectually safe so that the brain can be free to focus on learning. Think about the best learning experiences you have had in life. For me, it has been when teachers established authentic connections that built mutual trust and respect. Becoming a culturally responsive educator is not a quick or simple process for teachers to master. We need time to build upon skills we already have and to examine practices we employ that may not be working for some students, that may be working for some students, but do not consistently build the intellectual capacity of culturally and linguistically diverse students. Culturally responsive education is about creating learning environments where all students are ready for rigor and independent learning. What is an independent learner? Independent learners have cognitive strategies for getting unstuck. They have learned to retrieve information from long-term memory. They rely on the teacher to carry out some of their cognitive load. They regularly attempt new tasks without much hand-holding. Those are great qualities, and I want to see those in all of my students. Of course, there are many of my students who rely on the teacher too much to do the thinking for them. They are unsure how to tackle challenging new tasks.
That's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, it looks like we have Laurel Fisher and Dr. Katie Topple. It looks like you're signed up together. You can both come forward and you'll have 3 minutes each. Perfect. And I'm also, as you're getting adjusted, gonna no, I'm not. I'm gonna continue chairing and Chair Wolf will join us.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Katie Topple, and tonight I am speaking on behalf of myself and my colleague Laurel Fisher. We partner as staff pillar leaders for the district's equity work. Additionally, we're both teachers in TTSD, parents of elementary age children, and have been part of TTSD's equity work for over a decade. There are 4 pillars which are the foundation of our equity work. They are staff, students, families, and community. The structure of the pillars was created because all of these groups are important stakeholders within our district. All of our equity initiatives and work have focused on one or more of these pillars, and the work includes the voices of many. Equity work is a collective effort. We led a group of 8 educators to work on adapting conversation protocols to support critical conversations in our elementary classrooms. In addition, we curated a diverse book list focused on children's literature that will help our students feel seen and valued in their classrooms and school community. All children should have exposure to quality literature that serves as mirrors and windows, meaning books that reflect their own identities and books that help them understand the identities of others. We shared this project with the TTSD community, and parents, families, and community members were invited to take part in previews of the project prior to teachers learning about it in professional development settings. The feedback from teachers and families has been overwhelmingly positive. This year, we also hosted a voluntary book study with staff members across 10 elementary schools to read the book Being the Change. Teachers volunteered their time to learn more about cultivating classroom communities of care for all students.
Our equity work spans across the 4 pillars of stakeholders in our system. We encourage those with questions to ask, to seek more information, and get involved in decision-making. We value all voices, including students, staff, families, and the broader community. Being in community with care is a normalized expectation from our Equity and Inclusion Department. We'd like to thank our current board members for their support of the bias incidents and hate speech policy adopted in August of 2020 and the racial equity and social justice policy currently being drafted. We stand in solidarity with those doing the equity work in our district. We welcome our new board members and look forward to furthering our collective equity work. We are proud to work in partnership with the Equity and Inclusion Department in TTSD and support the equity policies, professional development for staff, and teaching practices aimed at achieving our TTSD mission, which is educate every child. Thank you for your countless hours and contributions and work toward a more equitable education system for all of our students.
Thank you, right on time. And we will move on to Rob Parness.
Very thankful that I don't have to figure out how to turn this thing on. A little less than a year ago, we were in a meeting and we had a student representative who happens to be sitting right behind me right now, who, if we were in the same space, would have looked all of us dead in the eyes and said, which side of history are we going to be on? And I'd heard that phrase before, but it hit me a little differently that obviously, our society was in the throes of chaos. But I was very, very proud that day to work for a district that seemed to be so responsive to our students and to their families. And I can say that I know that equity work is difficult. I know that equity work is uncomfortable. As someone who's grown up with virtually every single kind of privilege that one person in this society can have, it is difficult to decenter yourself and practice empathy and perspective taking when you have not been asked to do so. And luckily, because our district cares about our students and listens to our students and listens to our families that need that empathy and need that perspective taking to happen, we have started to make positive changes. Why do we focus on our populations of color? Why do we focus on our students with disabilities? Why do we focus on our LGBTQ students, our students with trauma? Because they need it. That is where our resources need to go, because they are telling us, we are asking them, what do you need? And that's what they're telling us they need. They need our ears. They need our hearts. They need our minds. And do I believe that we should be doing more to support our staff in our equity work? Absolutely. Should we be doing more to support our uncomfortable students and their families? Absolutely. We are thinking of ways to improve every single day. I can speak to that myself as an equity coordinator. I am constantly reflecting on how I can bring more people into this work. But we cannot stop now. We cannot stop. They need us. They demand of us action. They demand courage. And they demand that we continue to listen and be responsive. Can we do that in culturally responsive ways that bring in more people? Absolutely. If you are opposed to our equity work, or maybe just are not quite aware of what our equity work entails, I want to work with you. I want to hear your voice and bring you in, but we will not stop. We can't. Not now. Too many times people have stopped fighting for underrepresented populations when things have gotten difficult. And I have been very proud to work in a district where I do not feel like that happens. At least we make our best efforts to not do so. And I certainly hope that today we will reaffirm our commitment to all students, that we care about their education and we will work accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment is Matt Kingsley.
My name is Matt Kingsley, and I'm a reading teacher and building equity coordinator at Fowler Middle School. I've worked in the district for 16 years, and I'm proud to be working in a district today that is prioritizing equity work. I'd like tonight to express my gratitude and appreciation to the board, cabinet, school administrators, and school staff members for working to improve the lives and outcomes for all students. This is not a new goal. We've been struggling to improve these outcomes for years, but it is only recently, in my opinion, that these efforts have received the backing needed to create change. Here's some examples of changes. Before, there were no affinity groups. Students of color and other marginalized groups would have no time or space to meet in affinity with each other. Now, many schools have a large offering of affinity groups. These groups do not divide us, but help promote a greater sense of belonging to the school community, which leads to increased school success. Students tell us they value this opportunity to be together. Before, there was little meaningful outreach to families of color or communities in the margins. Schools reached out to families only when there were problems. Families did not trust the school system or feel it was designed to help them. Families did not feel valued. Today, we reach out to our families in the margins to bring their voices to the table and learn directly from them about their needs and concerns instead of making assumptions. We listen better to feedback and are more responsive, and families feel more valued because of it. Before, there was little to no partnering with community organizations for better outreach and understanding, resulting in insufficient resources and services for families. Today, our amazing culturally responsive liaisons help partner with community organizations like the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, and the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization, and the REAP Multicultural Youth Leadership Organization to help reach out to all students and communities represented in our district. These partnerships provide much needed services and resources to families and help us gain better understanding of our diverse communities' needs. Before, as a predominantly white district, we didn't know how to talk to each other about complicated topics like race or implicit bias, but we didn't know how to reach out to families that didn't look or sound like ourselves. Today, we use protocols that bring people of all identities together to listen to each other and engage in meaningful conversations that promote respect and understanding of each other. Before, there was no district level policy we could refer to when condemning racism, hate speech, and bias. In the absence of policy, there was lack of consistent practice and there was confusion. The district has adopted, now the district has adopted an anti-racist resolution and a hate speech and bias policy, and will shortly be discussing an educational equity and racial justice policy. These policies support and guide our work at the school level. I've highlighted just a few examples of the inequities in our system that have been reduced thanks to our district's equity work, and I believe we all stand to benefit from it.
That is your time. Thank you. Next public comment is Amanda Juriak.
Hello. Hello, board and fellow members of the community. I'm Amanda Juracek. I am a junior at Tualatin High School and part of their student government and IB program. I am here today to speak on behalf of the equity work being done throughout the school district. I think it is important because it teaches empathy. When we learn about history and read books from other cultures, and then have respectful discussions about these cultures and our differences, it is easier to understand where they are coming from. I think that having these types of deeper discussions keep us more connected and therefore stronger as a community. It seems as though many of the arguments against this type of teaching are saying that while educating students about the truth of our country's racist history, we are making white kids feel guilty and or ashamed of being white. As a white student myself, I understand that the purpose of these lessons are not to make me feel bad about myself. Learning about the injustices of slavery does not make me feel bad personally, because I had nothing to do with this. However, knowing where we came from and in what mindset many of our systems were created has been a good thing for me, because I can acknowledge that these systems have benefited me in ways that it hasn't for others. This realization, along with empathy for others, teaches students how to work to create a society that can admit its faults but continue to grow. And that's why I urge you to continue on the path of equity. It benefits everyone. Also, I heard something about tag classes, and I would appreciate it if you kept those two
because if I didn't have Math 7 in 6th grade, I would have become a little bit bored and disconnected from school. Thank you for your time.
We're going to do one more because we're still not at the full 30 minutes, and we'll let the next person speak for their full time, and then we will wrap up and I'll explain what happens next. Next person is Bayard Lyons. I said that right?
Okay, thank you. There were so many great things said. I almost felt like I didn't need to speak. Hi, I'm Bayard Lyons, and I teach engineering and design, the elective here at Tualatin. I'm here to support the district's equity work. I began teaching many years ago as a Peace Corps volunteer in West Africa, teaching math and science. And I got sold as a teacher. I wasn't sure that's what I wanted to do. When I saw how kids there embraced school as a way to a better future. And I felt as a teacher, I was opening a door, helping to open a door for them to a brighter future and a lot of possibilities. So that sort of convinced me how important it was to be a teacher. I've since then taught at various levels, from elementary all the way to post-secondary. And now I find myself at middle school, and people ask me if I'm crazy to teach middle schoolers. And the thing I love about middle school is because middle schoolers are like right at that age where they're ready to take on. They're just sort of forming who they're going to become. And what's tough to teach middle schoolers is kids who feel that that door isn't open to them. And especially in the STEM field, you know, my job is to try to get as many kids excited about STEM, especially kids who are underrepresented in the STEM fields. And you know, I want to be there to open that door for all kids. We need all kids to get excited. We need for our country, but just for all the joy that, in my mind, being working in science, technology, engineering, art, or math, any of those areas brings. I think all kids deserve that, and we need to keep working through equity work to make sure that door is open to all kids.
All right, thank you very much. So that will conclude the public comment section at this point in the agenda. There's still 8 folks signed up. If you are still present at the end of the meeting when we finished our last action item, we will reopen public comment and allow you your 3 minutes to speak. Otherwise, you can send your public comment to Patty Roberts. The board will review those public comments and they'll be included in the minutes for tonight's meeting. And I'm going to hand it over to Board Chair Maureen Wolf to preside.
Thank you all, and my sincere apologies for being, I think I'm going in now. First, I want to thank Vice Chair Bowman. I'm sure he did a fabulous job in my absence. And many of you know that I'm also the Oregon School Boards Association president. And I had the opportunity to listen in as the governor is trying to sort through how we continue with these funds to support our equity work and our students that are here in the margins. And I just am taking a moment to just express what it's like to walk into this building and have asked so many of you to say yes in 2016. And right across the street is Templeton and so many beautiful buildings. And I walked in to listen to so many of you say yes to this equity work. And I'm just overwhelmed. And I just appreciate you all for being here and sharing your thoughts about the work of the district. So thank you for that. And with that, we will move to reports and discussions. And I'd like to welcome Director Tracy Rose for our Student Rights and Responsibility Handbook.
Good evening. In your board packets, I provided to you the current Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. This is a handbook that has had very minimal updates over the last 2 years. This is a standing agenda item at this time of the year for the board. So I'm here tonight just to simply update you on where we are. This is not a first read. This will be an update on the work that we had hoped would be accomplished this past year. However, that would have meant a lot of convening, and we know that we weren't convening this year. So we will pick this work up now, starting now, and we hope to do quite a bit of it over the summer and be able to come back to you to the board in the fall to review a handbook that is more reflective of all the work that's been done over the last 2 years. It started out with a lot of policy review that I had the pleasure of sitting in on with some of you, but even more just reflecting back on the year and everything that we have done since March of last year and making sure that it is reflective in the handbook. The other piece I think that was really valuable for us is to learn that the handbook is really applicable at the high school level, not necessarily at the elementary level, somewhat at the middle school level. So we're going to take the examples of some of the other districts that we've seen and have a levels appropriate handbook, as well as one that meets the needs of our parents as well. So if there are any other questions, I know I answered some earlier today.
Board members, any questions?
Emily, I hope to engage with you as we do this work. All right, thank you.
Tracy, thank you. Okay, jumping quickly to the second and last report and discussion item. It is strange to do this with math. I'm sorry, I'm just going to digress a little bit. Okay, thank you. So many of you know the board started actually in a process several months ago with our facilitators, John Munson and Tara Cooper, to really think about our equity work. We have traveled through a book discussion and really landed as kind of the culminating activity of really thinking deeply and reflecting on our work we had an equity policy that was in place several years ago, but to really look at that and say what really represents the work of the district today. And through that process, we started really with a work session with the board. What are the key themes? What are the things that we care about? And built a framework in an initial draft. From that, I want to do a shout out and thank Director Unn. She ran several listening groups. I see some of those that participated in those and gave us feedback on what they felt about the policies. I think that information has been included in the board packet. And then from there, Vice Chair Bowman and I worked to again revise the policy to lift up that thinking. And then that was what was included this morning or this evening's board packet. So the thing that I want to say first and foremost is educational equity and racial justice. This policy is absolutely about educational rigor, and it speaks through the preamble, committed to academic and personal success. This commitment to educational equity means that student success should not be predicted or predetermined as those items listed in the policy. Despite this commitment, we understand that the opportunity gaps persist. So we want to stay grounded in what is the purpose of this policy to lift up our students and define the areas where we want to see things differently, and then hold the district accountable for those actions and make that as your part of that engagement. The one thing before I'm really going to open it up, and I'm actually, Vice Chair Bowman would like you to add any thoughts you would like to. The one recommendation is while we talk about resources, voice, workforce diversity, to really lift the equitable access to high quality education as number one, because that really is job number one, and to lift that up and ground the policy there. But all these pieces are so incredibly important in the work that we do as a district, and we heard it from the groups that gave feedback to Director Unn. And so we really want to change or enhance how we do work here in the district. And I just want to also do a tremendous shout out to our Superintendent, Ricky Smith, has been such an advocate for this work and really is stepping up around the accountability to ensure that happens at the district level. So I appreciate her work as well. And with that, I'm going to hand the mic to Vice Chair Bowman and let him add. And then from there, we'll facilitate conversation with the board.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief. A couple thoughts. First, we looked at the equity policies of almost a dozen districts across the state, actually across the country, drew inspiration from many of them, but really wanted to create a document reflect community and this school district. So we took our best shot at it, and we probably didn't get it exactly right. And I don't think that this is the type of policy that is supposed to be adopted and stay the same for forever. I think this is something that we'll have new board members, so I imagine we'll have new perspectives to bring to this conversation, new teachers, new administrators, all of whom will have more recent training and understanding of the work. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing to have a policy that can grow and adapt over time. I also wanted to reiterate, I think, something really important that Chair Wolf said, which is this is a policy about academic excellence. There's a misconception that equity work is somehow unrelated to academic outcomes. The reason why we do equity work is to pursue academic excellence for all of our kids in this district. That's the point. And I would direct folks to look specifically at the accountability section, where I think this is a first of its kind policy where we are directing, and I will say with the support of our superintendent, to conduct an equity audit to look at specific outcomes, including academic outcomes, enrollment in advanced courses and programs, special education identification, well-rounded educational participation, including athletics and arts, discipline and referral data, and racial and linguistic workforce diversity measures, including employee retention. Those are academic measures. Those are measures of a student's educational experience. That's what the policy is about. But it's about that for every kid in this district and not just students who have historically succeeded. So I just think that that was an important point that you made that I wanted to underscore. And I look forward to the discussion from our
Well, I want to start out by, can I take this off? Thank you. I want to start off by thanking both of you. I know you put in a lot of hours, and Director Unn, I don't think she's here tonight, but thank her and all the participants that contributed to this. Just so that those of you know where the rest of the board members, so this is the first time we've seen it, this draft. So initially we got together and kind of covered kind of the key things we wanted to see in the equity policy. And then the two directors here, Wolf and Bowman, created kind of a first draft. So anyway, I just wanted to say great. This is a great start. So thank you. And I think a lot of this is just going to be kind of clarifying what we mean. And I really appreciate the fact that we're emphasizing academic rigor. And I see a lot of the themes that we had talked about in our meeting way back a couple, 6 weeks ago or so. So yeah, so I look forward to this conversation. And also, I guess I also want to ask, I guess we can see how it goes tonight, but I'm hoping just to kind of listen tonight and that we'll have more opportunities at a later time.
So I think, Director Fox, what I'd like to suggest is definitely want to address all the questions and comments. I do encourage you to share those. So we'll circle back with you when we're at the end, because if there is a sense that we can move forward to a second read at the next meeting in June. That is our plan, and that's been the timeline. So I think we'll just do consensus at the end on a sense of how we're progressing and what board members feel is still needed between now and an approval. And Emily and Rowan, obviously grab a mic when you're ready and please share.
I'll start because I did make some written notes that I was going to share. I think there's 4 there, and I'll get one for the students. Because I had been part of a few of the groups that were listed and heard some of the feedback firsthand, but definitely went back through the ABC protocols to see if we really were capturing everything that was requested, because those were the people that have been doing the work that some of them testified tonight, saying that they've been doing the work for years, and these are the kinds of the things that they want to have in policy so it can strengthen their work. So then I hand it away. So the beginning part is just little things. I bolded the things that I really care about. It's more like typo kind of things. So I won't go into those, but the bigger thoughts that I had, I definitely would like to add a definition for historically marginalized. We have received confusion about that term, and I think it has a place in the policy and would like to add that. What I realized in looking at the protocols was that we are not addressing voice of our staff of color specifically and empowering that voice. We mentioned the students and their families, but I'm hoping that we can add something into the workforce diversity section that calls out their voice and how we would incorporate their voice into future policy. I do think there's some ed talk going on in the policy. The word pedagogy always makes me giggle because it's just a funny word. And I don't know if we want to consider more common English as opposed to ed talk, but maybe that just means more definitions. And then the last thing that came up in the comments was curriculum, grading practices, and assessments, and having looking for unbiased assessments, having equitable grading practices, and definitely the curriculum we've heard. And I know that we kind of addressed that in another policy, but I felt like it had a place here. And then I also thought there's a lot in this policy, and so maybe it's enough for now, knowing that it will be more of a living document, and maybe those things can be added in the future.
Thank you, Director Emerson. I think those are really good. That's good feedback. We should have a conversation for definition. What should and shouldn't go there. That was something Director Wolf and I struggled with. What do we include in a definition? What do we not? So point taken. I think you're right about that. Really like the catch. I think it was inadvertent that staff was left out of the voice section. So thank you on that. Ed talk for sure. We could work on that. The curriculum, grading practices, and assessments is an interesting one. That was one that I think was originally on the spreadsheet of potential topics, and where we landed was because we have a specific policy for curriculum, that we should probably review that, because some of you may recall the conversation we had about that last time, and I think it's worth revisiting. But if there's a way to make it fit here and maybe cross-reference the other policy, I wouldn't be opposed to it. So I'd be interested in what other folks think. But that was the conversation why we decided to leave it out of this version.
Director Emerson, thank you. And the only thing that I would add to Director Bowman's comments is now, it's funny, you have all these revisions and then you realize what you forgot that you started with. And as Ben mentioned, the policy around curriculum was identified. And I think in the cover sheet where identified the evaluation policies should be reviewed, I think that should go in there. And I don't, to Vice Chair Bowman's, I wonder if there's in that audit, or that policy review, that there's priority policies that are reviewed and include that in there. But great feedback, and we'll see how to address that so that it's flagged. If it's not here, that it's a priority in the coming years, because I completely agree. It's a good addition. So Director Zertsman, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I want to reiterate a couple of things that Director Emerson pointed out. Given the number of emails we've gotten from members of the community who are confused about what terms mean, I think that going overboard on defining terms in this policy is probably a better thing than doing too few. And so historically marginalized, I think, is one that I flagged that I would like to see defined. Also, in the equitable allocation of resources section, there's a parenthetical about equitably, which does not mean equally. And that seems like a very, it's burying a fairly important point of the difference between equality and equity. And I would say that that requires a definition of its own in the glossaries, because that's important, rather than just a parenthetical aside. I share Director Emerson's concern that there is a lot of ed speak, especially with a policy that's going to be, I am sure, read frequently by members of our community. The more we can make it in lay terms rather than edu-speak, I think it would be a stronger policy. There's one section in particular that I flagged is the last sentence of cultural competency, where it got to, it almost felt like buzzword bingo to me. And even after reading the sentence a couple of times, I'm not entirely sure what all of those words together mean. I know what the intent of them is, but if I were a member of the community, I would not have a clue what's being said there. So I think just going through with an eye to who our audience is for this policy. It is our teachers, but it is also members of our community, and I want to make sure that it's accessible to people who don't have ed degrees. That being said, this is a phenomenal first draft and a really impressive piece of work, and I want to say thank you for the really hard work you've put into this.
Rowan and Emily, do you guys want to go, and then we'll follow up with Director Fox? You guys are good? So I kind of have some larger questions, nitpicky stuff. But I agree with, I think most of us here that we want to be clear on what we're communicating. And I'm not sure who said this, but my husband was telling me about it this morning. I can't remember who the person was, but it says communicate to be understood, but not to be misunderstood. Don't communicate to be understood, but not to be misunderstood. And I think that I agree that we need to be really clear about what we're talking about. And so I wanted to ask some questions about use of terms, because they're different than what we've used in the past. And I just want to understand what we're trying to convey to them. So if you guys wouldn't mind bearing with me, and you don't have to answer these today, but I just think it'd be helpful to maybe have a discussion or clarification. And again, be patient, please. This is some of them are kind of nitpickier. Some are more important than others, but we talk about in the first paragraph that this commitment is anchored in the belief that every student has the right to the equitable educational opportunities and a school experience that's safe, welcoming, and respectful. And I just wanted to clarify, validating, empowering, and just. And I was just wondering what the difference is, because in the past we've always talked about safe, welcoming, respectful. And so what do those mean? Yeah, first paragraph. Let's see, second sentence. It says, this commitment is anchored in the belief that every student has the right to equitable educational opportunities in its school experience that is validating, empowering, and just. And I was just questioning, in the past we've used terms like safe, welcoming, and respectful. So I just wanted to understand
what we're trying to convey. So that was, you don't have to answer that now. Okay. And I will make a comment and then I'm going to hand it to Vice Chair Bowman. And I guess for me, when I think about this, I don't know that I was necessarily thinking about the language that we've always used in the past. And I think validating and empowering are two words that I think most people would understand and not feel that they need a definition to them. But I'll say for me, when you're validated, you feel like your presence and your work is important, and people, teachers, peers support what you're doing, and your presence is important in the room. Empowering is that you are given that space to stand up, to speak, and that people expect you to be part of the conversation, just like everyone else. And to me, just is that it's right. And so for me, I feel a preamble is aspirational and inspiring, and that's visionary to me and what I want for experiences from students. And I hadn't really thought about what I would say to that, so I appreciate the question. But that's what I want for each child, and that's what I believe those words mean to me. And for that, I'm going to hand it off to Ben.
I think that was well said. I will just add, for me, this section was, I was thinking about our listening sessions with the students and the parents from over a year ago, where, well, testing, safe and respected is a bare minimum and not sufficient, I think. I think this is stronger language than we've used in the past, but I think that's intentional. Validated, feeling validated and empowered is more than just feeling safe in a classroom. It's telling you that who you are is not just safe here, but it's welcomed and valued and appreciated. And then the just piece, I think, is about just fairness and how recognizing that it's not just to encounter racism. It's not just to encounter racial slurs. It's not just to experience the disparities in the system that are laid out later in the policy. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Thank you. That was helpful. So along the same lines, I think this is my next question is we use in the second paragraph, we use empower instead of other words like equip. So it sounds like that's along the same lines. It's just you're using stronger language. So in the third paragraph, it talks about, despite this commitment, the district's persistent opportunity gaps between white students and students of color remain. And my clarification there is, are we talking about white students only? We're going to include Asian students, or are we just focusing on, I'm just curious what the rationale was there too, because we're talking about opportunity or academic achievement gaps, or, I'm sorry, third paragraph or sentence.
Good question. I'm trying to track the paper copy versus, okay. Yeah, so despite this commitment, the district's persistent opportunity gap between white students and students of color remain. I think candidly, that's because when in most situations where opportunity gaps are discussed, it is the gap between white students and students of color. I think that's, I agree that that's a sort of simplified version of opportunity gap for sure. There's other opportunity gaps. But I think for our purposes, that's specifically.
Yeah, so, and just to clarify, so this is opportunity gaps, which isn't achievement necessarily. And this is where I start getting the terms. So opportunity gaps are necessary, opportunities to help students achieve academically, right? So opportunity gaps, what you're saying is that it's when we discuss that, it's mostly whites and students of color. So I just want, again, trying to clarify.
And, you know, Dr. Ricky Smith, I know kind of at the front end when we started these conversations with you and with cabinet, we talked a lot about the opportunity versus academic, those terms. So I thought it might be helpful if you kind of gave your perspective, because I felt that was an important one for you.
Thank you. I think the issue is we have historically, not just TTSD, but nationally, held the conversation about academic gaps. And as we dig deeper, we understand that those academic gaps many times end up being created because of the opportunity to learn. And you've heard a number of public comments relative to that today. So the concept here is the opportunity to learn. Does every student that walks through the door have and is sitting in the classroom have the opportunity to learn at their rate and level? So this also means, what I appreciate about this policy, this also means that we are looking at those students who are tagged. We are looking at students who are advanced learners. We are looking at students who have not yet reached their full potential, simply because potentially they haven't been stretched or provided the right instruction to really help them reach that stretch goal. And that's where back on April 26th, when I showed you the current assessment tools that have been approved in this district, is that they literally call out stretch goals for students for that reason. Because as I looked at our data when I first came in as superintendent, it's not just that you take a look at your historically at those students of color and other demographics that are not moving, but you absolutely take a look at your tag and advanced learners. And when you don't see them achieving the same potential, that's a flag that we need to really understand each and every student by need, by name and by need. I'm hopeful that helps.
Okay, thank you for your patience again. That was helpful. Okay.
Just because a couple things came to mind when we were talking about that just now, specific things, because I'm the example person. I think a great example of an opportunity that we are addressing is pre-K, that not all of our community members have been able to have a pre-K experience. And so that is an opportunity that I look at. That is something that we're closing. And then also the mention under well-rounded education, mentioning barriers to participation. And there's many, they're diverse, and they might be specific to individuals, but any kind of barrier like that would be an opportunity that they're missing out on.
Okay. So the next sentence, just to clarify again, in pursuit of creating an equitable and racially just system, the district commits to the following. And I just wanted to clarify that statement. So does this statement imply that we're looking at racism because is that causing the opportunity gaps? Or are we just saying that we're trying to create a racially just system by looking at all kinds of different causes and effects? If that makes sense.
Jill said she thinks it's the latter, and I do too. We are pursuing an equitable and racially just system, and because of that, we are committing to doing this, is I think what we intend.
Okay. So might be good to clarify. And then so then for equitable allocation of resources, a couple of questions I had about that is so I understand what we're trying to achieve with allocation of resources. Some students need more than others. But what I wanted to clarify is, a couple of things. Who decides, and are we saying the superintendent is ultimately in charge based on the paragraphs later about who decides what the needs are of students? Is that what ultimately who we're delegating this to? And at what point does the board make those decisions?
So yeah, Jim. Later in that paragraph, Director Fox, it says that district and school administration are directed to invest resources using an equity lens.
Yes, that's what I'm asking the board is, are we delegating that responsibility to completely, or do we, since we ultimately approve budgets, I'm just clarifying what the intent of that, since how is it different from what we're doing today, I guess is what I'm asking.
I don't think it is different from what we're doing today. I think we're codifying what we're doing today in this policy.
Is everybody else?
Yeah, Sharon, I appreciate what Director Zertsmeet said. I think it is calling out in the policy as we look at all these pieces. These are the things that we're committing to. So as a budget committee member, as a board member, we should be using an equity lens. We should be thinking about this policy as we make budget decisions. Did we do this in a fair way that really acknowledged resources need to be at a higher level for marginalized students? Or is the intent of this policy being followed? I also feel that that also comes back to the accountability, right? We said that we want resources equitably allocated, voice empowered, a workforce that reflects our students, PD that matters, reflects cultural competency, and then we create an equitable, high quality curriculum or education, and then we're going to hold it accountable and make sure that we have our community involved to check. I mean, and I think at a policy level, that's what this is wanting to accomplish.
Chair Wolf, if I might, I think what you've done here is reaffirmed what this district's been doing for over 5+ years relative to the Smarter School spending process. So you all know well, you have 3 charges as a board: the governance of this district via policy, the hiring and evaluation of the superintendent, and then the management of the budget. So to your concern, Director Fox, I don't see any, first and foremost, the budget is set via that process, and the board evaluates that. Director Moore and others, we have just completed that process out in the schools, with our community, taking a look at what programs are effective, what programs are not, who do they serve, how well are they behaving. So I see this as really more, my take of this is more of a reaffirmation of what we are already doing. And then the superintendent and the district, as your agents, then follows through with those priorities.
Okay.
Wanted to chime in a little bit because I think it's more than just affirming the status quo. I think it's that, but also, to me, one of the important parts of this section is the last section is about accountability. And we're going to have this report that said, here are the disparities in our system. Refer back to equitable allocation of resources. That's where we can shift our levers as a district to close the gaps that we've identified in the audit. So I would just add that context.
Okay. Well, that's helpful because we're just, like Jill had said in the minute, Director Zertsmeet had said, that we're just codifying what we're already committed to doing these past couple of years. But I just wanted to clarify. So thank you. I know, Director Wolf, I can tell by the pitch in your voice, you're getting impatient with me. Let's see. So going down to, just a couple of definitions. And this gets back to what Director Emerson talked about under professional development, critical self-reflection. Is that a more formal process, or is that just, kind of like what we would use? I'm going to think about that. So I wanted to ask that, does that refer to something, a program or a method that we're talking about? Or is that just, I'm sorry, professional development, the very last 3 words on that paragraph, opportunity for critical self-reflection. Just wanted to clarify.
Well, for me, I go right back to the book that we studied, right? And thinking about our own critical self-reflection. So I don't know if that should be a term that needs to be defined. Vice Chair Bowman, you can add as well, but I went directly to, if I'm an educator, if I'm an administrator, what is my role? Am I community focused? Am I asset-based lens? Am I looking at all the opportunities for the student? And what is my role in assessing my own performance in support of those students? And that's what that means to me. But Ben.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to get over defined, but I think it's helpful because we did go through that process of discussing that as a board, what that means. I don't know, just something to think about if we do want to define it. It'd be helpful so that people know what we mean. Okay. And then what do we mean by under cultural competency? at the very last sentence, we talk about professional dispositions, especially culture. What is that? What is professional disposition? Okay. Very last few words under cultural competency, the paragraph, the very last few words are and professional dispositions, especially cultural. So I was just wondering what professional dispositions mean.
Well, what I would offer is what I shared in my comments earlier to the board, which is the idea, and you've heard it this evening in terms of public comment from our teachers who see themselves as warm demanders. So again, it is not so much a canned specific program, but attributes of what we expect to see relative to teachers holding high expectations for students. Teachers believing that every student that walks into their classroom can and will learn regardless of situation. And so I really, at this point, that's professional disposition. Do you believe that every child can learn or do you not? Do you behave in a way that demonstrates that? How do we know? How do you teach? How do you measure? How do you respond to data when the student is not learning versus when the student is learning and needs to be stretched? So all of those are professional dispositions.
And I think that that phrase, the phrasing was actually pulled from Oregon's framework for evaluating administrators. Disposition is one of
Yes,
them.
that is correct. And those going forward will be some of the standards that, based on when this policy is put into implementation, we will then go back through the evaluation standards for teachers and administrators and pull those standards that align to this language.
Well, I really like that explanation, by the way. That's very rich and meaningful. I know you've said that before, but I love when you explain that because it's just very rich.
I know that it sounds as though it is more complicated, and it's not. It's just about great teaching.
But I think it's nice to have it laid out, and I know you'll do that in the standards. Anyway, so thank you. Okay, I'm almost done. The only thing I was going to say under accountability, we're talking about that first paragraph. By the way, I really like that paragraph. But the first sentence where it talks about the superintendent will annually lead the completion of an equity audit, which will systematically review existing policies, programs, professional development budgets, student outcomes to ensure. So we're not, I mean, what does that look like? Because the description is actually down below, right, in terms of what we want. Because when I first read that, I go, whoa, that's a lot of stuff to report on. But I felt better as I read further down when we got more specific. So I just wanted to clarify, is that what that intended is, kind of the overall versus the specific down below? Because that seems like a lot. And so I just want to understand what we're actually asking for so we don't overwhelm our superintendent.
Yeah, I think, so we're not asking for an annual review of literally every single policy, but we're saying that the audit should review all of these different components of our district as they relate to the disparities that get identified in the report. And with your interpretation.
And I agree, Vice Chair Bowman, even as we think about policies, right? I think, if that's, and I really am looking to the future board, right? How and certainly to Dr. Ricky Smith as superintendent in terms of what are the specifics, what is the community committee accountability, what will this look like? What does year one look like? And I think, already there's some really meaningful and meaty policies to have a conversation about. But I think it just creates a lens or a decision point that says, yes, we're going to hold ourselves accountable. Even in the meeting that I was with on the governor's call on funding, it was talking about community engagement with SIA and what a great process that was. But have all our districts close the loop and come back to the community to say, this is the SIA dollars, this is what we're, and I think this is what we're trying to accomplish here. It's that close the loop back to our community and to share what we've been doing.
I like that a lot. And so I just hope that we codify that again in this, that it covers that in this paragraph. Because I think we put a lot of thought into this as a board. And so I just want to make sure that comes across as understood.
Can you clarify what specifically would you like to see codified in the language? Basically just the explanation of
all that we just discussed. We can go back and watch the video. I don't have any specific suggestions. That's what you're asking. I was just more of a question, and maybe it's something we can mull over before the next one about whether it's conveying what you just said.
Yeah, because my only comment was going to be, I don't know that I would change the words based on the conversation. I don't know. That's what I'm kind of trying to get really specific here. But I appreciate the question.
So this gets to audience. If the superintendent and the cabinet feel that this is operationalizable, then that's our goal. That was the audience I think I was writing for when we were crafting this. So I would kind of use that as our standard, but that's my preference. So before we wrap up the first reading, I did want to get a sense, because I assume next steps will be, we will huddle, bring back a revised version for second read and potential adoption. Director Emerson has written down historically marginalized as wanting a definition. Jill has called out equity and equality as needing to be defined. Are there any other definitions that folks want included in that glossary?
Possibly, where'd it go? Cultural responsiveness. And I know that we have competency there, but there is a slight difference. And especially if we're going to address Director Fox's question about critical self-reflection, since that was culturally responsive leadership.
The critical responsiveness would be reflective of the critical self-reflection. That would capture that. Or are you and that should be another one?
I think I'm more and.
Okay, got it. Okay, I really appreciate the conversation. I feel this is incredibly doable to move forward, and we will move forward with a second read at the first June meeting. If there's any other, and Karen, I appreciate you putting it in writing for us on some of the adjustments. And then certainly Dr. Ricky Smith, if staff have given you any feedback, certainly forward that to Vice Chair Bowman and myself, so we can address that. But many of you that are still here that participated in the feedback process, I'm really grateful for your time and commitment towards this policy. And I think then with that, we will close report and discussions, and we will move to our action items. And the first one is student representative resolutions. Yes, we are going to take a 5-minute recess, and it's 8:13. So let's just say 8:20. We'll do 7 minutes, and thank you all.
State feels okay, comfortable with what we got? Your call. At this point, I think. Yeah, why don't we-
All right, if we could get people settled back down, we'll begin with our action items. So we will begin this evening with our student representative resolutions. And my board book is not loading, so I can't see it, but I know they're there. And I first want to recognize, I don't think that Eddie is with us. Patty, is that correct? Okay. So I do want to, Director Emerson is going to read the resolutions for us. So I will hand the mic to her. Before we get that far, though, I'm certain that Director Zertsny, Director Bowman, and Director Fox would like to share. But Rowan and Emily, you have been just outstanding student advocates and really went toe to toe in engagement, conversation, thought with us. And I am just so grateful for your leadership. And I think I hear that there are quite a few candidates for next year. And I think that's also a reflection of the engagement that you've done and that that's been modeled and they see it and see the opportunity. And I certainly am not going to leave Vice Chair Bowman out of that leadership piece, but truly you show what the potential could be. And I'm grateful for that. So thank you. And I'll hand the mic back and forth, and then I'll have Director Emerson read the resolution. So, and I hopefully, if you've figured out how to combine them.
Just a couple remarks. And I mean this sincerely, I think you have set the standard for your positions and what they could be. It's been remarkable to watch the level of confidence you came into this role from the very beginning, standing up to board members, myself included, pushing back on our positions, standing up to our cabinet and administrators when you disagreed with them, respectfully always. But that's what student voice is supposed to be about, not just when you agree with what's happening, but when you're representing a different perspective, and genuinely think that the way you've approached this role is unique from what I've seen historically. And I just have so much admiration for that. Rowan is headed off to Duke. Congratulations to Rowan. And Emily, believe it or not, we get another year of Emily in TTSD, though I don't believe she's applied to continue in her role. You've done a fantastic job. So I just wanted to say thank you both. And for kind of alluding, Maureen alluded to this, but I do think you've made it cool. You've made it appealing for people to engage at the school board level in a way that, again, is new, and I just think so exciting for TTSD. And I think, as Maureen said, the pool of applicants that we have to replace you is reflective of that. So you should be very proud of yourselves, and we're all proud of you. Thank you.
Well, Vice Chair Bowman stole my line about, I have really appreciated how you have grown and matured and gone toe to toe with us, gone toe to toe with me. It's refreshing. It's invigorating. Yeah, it's great to be challenged by students, because then I know that somebody out there is teaching you right. So we're doing something right. So thank you for being such phenomenal representatives of your schools. And Emily, next year, come back and give us public comment anytime you want.
I just want to say that you came at a, it couldn't have been a worse year to not the amount of growth that I've seen, and all of us really. I mean, honestly, all of us, but you too as well. And I just want to commend you on just learning along with the rest of this through this year. And that's part of the fun of being on the board is learning, and growing and learning from each other. So I appreciate your contributions. You guys have some really good questions, I have to say. So thank you. And you are respectful. And that's our part of the civil discourse process of learning how to have discourse. But I wanted to ask you guys a question, if I can, if that's okay. And that is, what are your takeaways? What did you learn?
That's tough. I definitely have to say that I know a lot more about how the school board operates, thankfully. Additionally, I know more about how the district operates and kind of how I can try to get something done, not just in a school district, but I think that will go with me as I go throughout the rest of my life, just how to interact with people in a way that you can collaborate and get something done that you might not think is possible initially. But I think it's been a really great experience to collaborate with everyone here, and definitely something different from any other experience I've had. So that is very, very valuable to me.
I would say the same things. I've learned differentiating the pathways to which we can make change, and whether it be like at the cabinet, like if I need to talk to cabinet, or knowing that I need to talk to the board, or how to tap into the different resources that our district provides so that we can really like change the right part of what we're trying to change, which is hard for sometimes hard for community members to distinguish, just because sometimes the processes are murky. And so that's something that I really appreciate from all of you, and as well as like, I think linguistically, like the process of writing policy and assessing them is just like something you don't get to do in any other position. And so I really appreciate that.
And lastly, I just wanted to bring up, I definitely did learn the difference between policy and AR, specifically thanks to Superintendent Dr. Sue. So thank you for that. That did take a while, but I think I got there.
No, I want to chime in and say thank you very much for your engagement all this year. When we were looking at our squares, we knew we could always count on you to be there and to share your thoughts. I've been fortunate enough to sit by the student reps all 4 years, and I have loved every minute of that. So I'm thrilled that I finally got to sit next to you guys tonight. I'm sorry that was our first chance, but that was something that was always special to me. So I'm glad we get 2 more. Do we have them come to both of them? I hope you'll come to 2 more meetings so that I get to sit with you again.
That probably went over the microphone. Russ, I just saw you sitting there, and I just wanted to do a shout out to Eddie, because just so appreciate, again, how we ensure we have voice from all our high schools. Incredibly thoughtful student. Really appreciated having him. And I know Patty has something of appreciation and gratitude from the board, and look forward to having student participation next year. So please convey to Eddie how much we really appreciate his participation and how important it is to have that from Creekside. So thank you so very much. And so I think with that, Director Emerson, I'll hand it back to you, and you can read the resolution.
Okay, Tigard-Tualatin School District 23J. Resolutions 2021, 15, 16, and 17, recognizing the outstanding contributions of school community relations of Emily Thuong Tran, Rowan Kelleher, and Eddie Agrion Rincon. Whereas Emily, Rowan, and Eddie have served as the Tualatin High School, Tigard High School, and Creekside Community High School student representatives to the board for the 2020-21 school year. And whereas they have been excellent liaisons between the students of Tualatin, Tigard, and Creekside Community High Schools and the Tigard-Tualatin School Board of Directors. And whereas their reports about the activities and events at Tualatin, Tigard, and Creekside Community High Schools and the achievements of Tigard-Tualatin, Tigard, and Creekside Community High School students and staff members have been informative and articulate and have addressed issues of concern to both the students and the school board. And whereas the outstanding manner in which they have done their job this year and the leadership skills they have shown have made them exemplary representatives of the Tualatin, Tigard, and Creekside Community High Schools student bodies to both the school board and the community. And now therefore, be it resolved on this 24th day of May, 2021, by the Board of Directors of Tigard-Tualatin School District 23J, that Emily Phuong Tran, Rowan Kelleher, and Eddie Aguion Rincon be commended for their outstanding manner in which they have performed their responsibilities as Tualatin, Tigard, and Creekside Community High School representatives, and for the contribution they have made towards school community relations.
I move to approve the resolution as read.
Motion was made and seconded to approve resolutions as presented. Any further discussion? Okay, since we're all together, we'll just do choral response this evening. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And congratulations again, and thank you both. The next item on our action list, middle school 6-8 science curriculum adoption recommendation, Director Robson.
Test. Okay. Patty, thank you. Board Chair Wolf, members of the board, good to see you this evening in person. It's a different thing. Rowan and Emily, I'd like to say congratulations. Also, well done this year. What we want to do this evening is take you through a presentation that brings forward a recommendation for Amplify Science, which is a 6-8 science curriculum. The exciting piece about this, especially tonight, is that this recommendation would put us in a place to have a K-8 very cohesive science program with the recent adoption of our TWIG K-5 curriculum as well. So they play off of each other very well, and in terms of how that curriculum spirals and moves kids through the system. So exciting in that regard. I do want to introduce tonight Elise Cohen, our K-12 Math and Science TOSA. She is new to us this year as of about a couple months ago, when Ashley Thomas, who was in that role, made a move to another district based on a family need that they satisfied. And so we were really excited to be able to bring Elise on board. And so happy to have her. Adrian Ash, a science teacher from Fowler Middle School, is here this evening as well. One of the reasons we absolutely want to hear her voice this evening is because she is one of our practitioners who is using Amplify and has been an integral part of the committee who worked us through the process here to come to a recommendation. Arnulfo Torres was also slated to be here, a teacher, a science teacher at Hazelbrook and Fowler. He's actually doing duties at both schools, and he was unfortunately not able to make it this evening. And then Lauren Loney will give us some audio. She is a team member from Amplify Science, who, if we were virtual, would have been here with us, but is not able to based on distance, but added audio to a couple of slides that we really appreciate that, because one of the things that we expect when we go through this process is when we come to a recommendation is that we take on new teammates. This is not just a publisher in and out situation, but we really look for those folks who can team with us and stick with us throughout the life of the adoption. So that said, Patty, if you go to the next slide. Just a review of our science committee process. We had committee creation. Oh, I'm sorry, Patty, I've jumped ahead one, I think. So just a reminder, we had, go ahead, Patty, go to the next slide. Right there. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. I jumped ahead. Go back one, Patty. Thank you. Hold tight there for a second. But we had not only our TOSA, our T&L team, but then we had representation across our 3 middle schools, 11 teacher representatives from 6th through 8th grade. We had administrators who sat with us on this committee. And throughout, we also have our board curriculum representatives, and Director Emerson and Director Zerschmied, who have always been diligent about being a part of these processes as well as a part of our community conduit through these processes. So Patty, if you go on to the next slide now. Just want to review the science committee process. So these bullets here really summarize how we move through a process that includes the creation of a committee, building a foundational guiding philosophy specific to science. We did it specific to K-8 science because we had science teachers K-5 through these processes sitting alongside initially with our 6th through 8th grade science teachers. The power behind that is that those are deeper conversations that really draw out what as a team and a group of practitioners strongly believe is wrapped around instruction, that followed by some very cohesive, clear statements, instruction, that, and then also assessment, that. And so those that guiding philosophy then grounded us throughout our work as we moved through the process. We aligned NGSS standards, and we looked at prioritizing those standards. So another awesome opportunity through our processes is that when we come together, alignment of standards is key to moving forward through this and making sure that we do have that alignment. And the beauty of that is that we have folks in the same room, K-8 in this situation, that we're able to look at that vertical articulation where now you're talking not just among colleagues who are in K-5 if I'm elementary at grade level, or 6-8 if I'm middle school, but really looking at the progression of priority standards throughout K-8. And then we come to a gap analysis through looking at our current resources that we have, looking at those prioritized standards and saying, do we have gaps? And what kind of gaps do we have? And the result of that gap analysis leads us to ask the question, do we need simply more supplementation? Or, excuse me, actually, kind of an initial is, do we just need more teacher training? Do we need to focus on some training with the current resource to wrap around pedagogy that, in best practice? And, or two, are we at a place where we need to bring in some supplementation and some different materials alongside the current materials we have, alongside also supportive teacher training? And then finally, the third decision then comes to, based on that gap analysis, do we need to move through a full adoption? And that's where we landed with the gap analysis that we did. So we moved through that process, and we then move into our curriculum reviews, and are through that vetting of and rating of curriculums that come to the table. Then we're able to get to a place of curriculum consensus and then recommendation. Next slide, Patty. Thank you. So just as you click on these, Patty, to bring up a few things, I just wanted to share this. As you click, go ahead and do that. It will start to build the timeline. And I just wanted folks to see that we started this process in October of 2019. And as we move through what I was describing in terms of the process, we get ourselves to a place where we were. So up to December 3rd, 2019, we developed a rubric, and we were at the ready to then start rating our curriculum as a part of that process in January. Keep clicking. It's kind of funky that way. But we got to our final publisher presentations. We collected and analyzed the results. We did some activities that really brought to the surface where our committee was in terms of teachers were in terms of the ratings that were coming forward in terms of the curricula being presented. And then we got to a place of recommendation, consensus actually with Amplify Science. And then what's been consistent throughout our processes has been that our committees have really wanted to dive a little deeper. Even though we were landing at Amplify Science, it was an opportunity to say, but can we also dive a little deeper into a unit or two with a pilot? And so we found that to be a great opportunity. And so we actually moved on that, and we trained our teachers around a unit within Amplify Science to go a little deeper, and then something called a pandemic rolled around. So we had a shutdown, and unfortunately, we had to wait on that a little bit. However, the impetus of the pilot was really wrapped around a lot of wanting to understand even further the technology behind Amplify Science and the ability. There's a lot of technology components that were intriguing and strong on paper, and hearing that, but folks wanted to grapple with those a little deeper. So CDL comes to play, and those who were trained and the combination of having options with Florida Virtual and Amplify, folks were able to, at different varying levels, really continue to move down the path of using Amplify. So that was encouraging. That led us to then be able to, Pat, if you would move to the next slide, to come to a place of bringing our teachers and our committees back to the table and wrapping around a debrief that was more intentional, having had additional opportunity for folks to use Amplify and get us to this place of recommendation. So Elise, I'm going to turn that over to you.
So here we have on the right is the philosophy statement. And as Todd mentioned, this is one of the grounding documents for this process. We're looking at how curriculum, instruction, and assessment are playing out for the curriculum. And then using that, the rubric is really closely tied to it, and it helps to identify those priorities, such as culturally responsive practices that are then rated for the different curricula that are being evaluated, and it allows particular resources to rise to the top. Next slide. And so Ed Reports is another data point that was considered. It's an independent nonprofit that evaluates instructional materials, and they review middle school science curriculum, and they review other things too, but for middle school science, this is the only curriculum that met all of the expectations in the different categories. So it was the most highly rated. Next slide.
So in terms of debriefing, wanted to add this slide. This is similar to when we went through our TWIG, our K-5 TWIG science adoption as well. The debriefing, wanted to point these out because the rubrics are important to understand in terms of the committee themselves really digging into making sure we've got the right components to that curriculum that comes through the door. And then the activity that you see there, number 2, the evaluations and spending my dollar was another way. We've done some similar processes through the SIA process, and when we look at budget and that kind of thing, but it's an opportunity for folks in a couple of different variations to really talk about why they like what they like coming off of the evaluation and use of the rubric. And it gives us some hard data that really shows where the committee is specific to the curriculum that is rising, which ones are rising to the top. And then through those processes, Amplify Science rose to the top in all of those exercises that we put forward. And then the curriculum, the other piece of that, the curriculum comparisons then, once those were narrowed, that data itself really was the determining factor. based on all the vetting that took place. And then we went through consensus processes, especially coming back on the debrief after we moved through CDL, regrouped, and really dug into making sure we were on the right track still with Amplify Science after having that kind of extended, interesting situation that we found ourselves in. So, and so we had 86% of our committee who was saying, yes, this is the choice. Let's go down that road. We, as a smaller group of 11, one of our committee members also then said, which equates to 14%, said, I am absolutely in favor, but I do have some more questions. So it opened up the opportunity for some questions. And so we went down that path. So we were very confident that yes, indeed, we have come to that place of recommendation. Next slide, Patty, please. So there is a curriculum overview website that is just part of what we want to be able to do is to have folks dig in and take a look at the curriculum. We opened up a 2-week window as we do and provided a community with an opportunity to look at, take a virtual tour of the curriculum, ask questions, provide any perspective as they looked at the curriculum itself. And that's always really helpful because it just gives us a sense of what's out there for our community and gives folks an opportunity to dig in. It also includes other teachers in our district, the ability to do that. Patty, next slide, if you would. And so this is where, Elisa, I'm going to hand this to you and just kind of let you do a.
Sure. So we had invited our Amplify partners to come tonight, and they were all on board. And then we realized that we were in person. So instead of being able to be here with us, Lauren Loney, who was one of the team, put together some audio. And in the next 2 slides, we're going to hear a little bit of about Amplify from the Amplify team. So if we could.
Of equity, diversity, and inclusion. We know the importance of DEI to the Tigard-Tualatin School District. Amplify is proud to have DEI as a major focus in designing high-quality instructional materials. Thank you for allowing me to share what Amplify Science has done to increase awareness of equity, diversity, and inclusion. We know the importance of DEI to the Tigard-Tualatin School District. Amplify is proud to have DEI as a major focus in designing high-quality instructional materials. To that end, Amplify Science is built around 3 key points when it comes to DEI.
Will that be confusing to folks on YouTube? Okay. Okay. Turn my sound up here. Patty, let's give this a shot.
Is proud to have DEI as a major focus in designing high-quality instructional materials. To that end, Amplify Science is built around 3 key points when it comes to DEI.
All right, thanks. All right, so our last part, we wanted to share with you some voices from teachers who are using Amplify with their students in the classroom. And so we have today Adrienne Ash, who's going to share her experiences. Thank you, Adrienne.
Hello. So I kind of would just second what the Amplify representative just said. The things that she mentioned are things that I have seen as I've been using this. I used it last spring because I had access as a member of the adoption committee. I've been using it this school year. I also checked in with Arnulfo Torres today to get some of his feedback to include in this. And the thing that I've really liked about this curriculum is it is focused on the NGSS, and the NGSS, Next Generation Science Standards, are very phenomenon based. And this is designed that way. Every unit, the students have a question,
diverse representation,
problem to solve.
Amplify Science
the
students
real world
meet
thing, like why does Australia have a highest rate of skin cancer in the world? Or what exhibit would a newly discovered fossil go into in a natural history museum so that it's accurately displayed? And as they move through the unit, the learning centers around that question. It comes back to that question. Every lesson has a question that they specifically investigate that relates to that bigger question. And as they do the work in that unit, they're really focused on evidence. They're looking at what evidence can we collect to help us answer these questions to make this bigger decision that we need to make for this unit. And they do it with a variety of sources. There are hands-on activities, videos, really robust, engaging simulations that they can gather all sorts of data from and that they really enjoy. I have had students tell me these simulations are fun. I've watched them play with them just to play with them, even though we weren't using them in class. So they really love those simulations that are part of this. There are readings that they do that are up-to-date readings that have a lot of things built in to help students understand the reading. It's in English, it is in Spanish, it can be read aloud to them. It has embedded reading annotation strategies that they use, and a lot of student discussion around the readings and the evidence that they've collected as they work to answer these questions. Vocabulary is also distinctly called out. It's posted on the wall. It's revisited to help them learn these terms that they're not familiar with. They have built-in self-checks for their own understanding. There's a mid-unit check that allows the teachers to see where students stand in their understanding and differentiate them into activities that allow them to either bolster their understanding if they need it or take it further if that's the place that they're at. And they all get to end the unit with a Socratic seminar that allows them to use what they've learned and apply it to a new related question that goes along with the unit that they've been doing. It also has engineering internships embedded throughout each grade level where they're using their learning to help solve an engineering problem, such as designing an emergency supply drop to deliver aid after a natural disaster, after learning about force and motion, or developing a drug to battle malaria after learning about natural selection. In addition to all of that robust material that it has for the students, I have never seen a company so supportive of the teachers that use their materials. They have a lot of great supports already built into it. They have a very responsive system. They even have a chat available that we could chat with them right there in the middle of class if an issue came up. They listen to teacher feedback. They adjust as necessary. They've included activities that teachers have suggested before. They also this year, because they knew people would be online, designed slideshows for their teachers to use for their distance learning. So they are really there to support the teachers to in turn support the kids with what they're learning. And one thing Arnulfo wanted me to point out as the TWE teacher who has been using this, all of the materials for both the students and the teachers are available in English and in Spanish, which provides a really robust support for our TWE program. There is no need for the TWE teachers to translate anything. Everything, videos, simulations, reading, all of it is available for students to use in Spanish as well as in English. So this curriculum is a lot different than anything we've ever used before at the middle school level in TTSD, but I am incredibly impressed by what it does. I feel that by the end of unit, students have a deeper understanding of the content, and they're also learning throughout the year the idea of collecting evidence, analyzing evidence, and using that evidence to support questions and support statements that they're making. And I really think that this is going to do a lot to have a really well-rounded, robust science education for our middle school students in this district.
Thank you, Adrienne. Fantastic. I think at this point, we'll offer up questions. And
Well, powerful endorsement, Adrian. Thank you for being here to share that perspective. I think it's really helpful for us. My question, and Todd, you alluded to this at the beginning in terms of alignment with curriculum at upgrade levels. Sounds like a really excellent company. The ratings seem really stellar. Where are we at in adoption for science curriculum across the board?
So, how to do this. So Twig K5, we recently adopted last year. So, well, a little before, before the shutdown. So we are at a place right now. We have this year done some training with our K5 teachers with Twig to get them ready and moving into the summer, having had that experience. So in the fall, they'll be using it as our science adoption. And then this, assuming hopefully that we move forward with this particular curriculum, this will be, again, our efforts will be to continue to train and bring our teachers on board. So next year, without a doubt, in the fall, folks are using Amplify through and through. So that's the K-8 scene. In terms of our efforts at the high school level, 9-12, next fall, we actually jump into pulling our biology, chem, and physics teachers and building a process for those curricular areas. So we, hopefully mid-year, if all goes smoothly through the process, we'll be at a place of recommendation for 9-12 science as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just had a clarifying question when you talked about consensus. You were talking about on the committee. What was some of the input from the other? Because the other middle school teachers, my understanding is they didn't participate in the pilot. They had a chance. Did they have a chance for input?
The input realistically from other teachers who are not part of that process it can come through a pilot. So teachers have the opportunity to dive into a pilot that, it's not just the committee. So we do have some teachers who have experienced Amplify to the degree that they have through that process. The quirkiness of it all realistically with the shutdown was that it didn't make it a smooth kind of process overall that way to get more people kind of hands-on in that sense. However, that opportunity throughout, Adrian and colleagues on the committee also, I don't want to speak for you, but, are talking to their colleagues throughout the process. And feedback runs through the committee. And then also that 2-week window where we say, listen, we've got a recommendation here. They get communication from my seat that goes through our committee as well, that goes out to teachers. And then they've got some opportunity to dive into the online experience to go through the curriculum and ask any and all questions as well. So as much as we can, getting folks in the know around that, especially from a science colleague perspective, for sure.
Thank you. And then just a follow-up question to that about, I know it's been tough to get parent involvement during the COVID pandemic, but was there an effort to get parent input through this? And if so,
yeah, that was much like Twig, because we were in that virtual setting when we were doing where we ended up doing an online Google form virtual tour that we put out to everybody and said, during this time frame, dig into it, take a look. Do you have questions? Do you have comments? We haven't historically in those processes, even when we've done, in the same room kinds of opportunities through our adoption processes with not only, viewing the curriculum, but then also having what we put forward as a parent night, where we've actually had not only our publisher colleagues come, but also then teachers and that who we walk through the curriculum. We haven't had that opportunity through the virtual. So it's been really specific to that virtual tour that folks have been able to do and provide any feedback that way.
And mostly positive?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, we haven't historically received a lot, even when it's been face-to-face, folks have come. It's been very positive across the board. So it's been exciting that way. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, if no fellow board members have any other comments, I move that the board approve purchase of a 3-year adoption of Amplify Science curriculum for grades 6 through 8 and including professional development, supporting transformational instructional practices in an amount not to exceed $256,000 as presented.
I second.
Motion was made and seconded to adopt the Amplify Science curriculum as presented. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And thank you both for joining us tonight. And it was really powerful to hear the feedback from the classroom. Thank you. And we will move to new course proposals. Director Robson gets to stay put. And I think Russ will be joining us, or maybe just listening. I'm not sure. New course proposals, Quality Middle School and Creekside High School. Director Robson, and welcome, Russ.
Yes, thank you again, Board Chair Wolf, members of the board. We're shifting now to new course proposals for Tualatin Middle School and Creekside Community High School. And as a part of our process, just as a reminder that we generally shoot for kind of a first go-round effort around January as the year has progressed and giving folks an opportunity to understand potentially what they want mostly from a secondary standpoint. Obviously, our middle schools, as are represented here tonight, chime in and have some ideas around new courses, but for the most part, our high schools are who we see come forward. But that said, this year has been a year again, as I mentioned the last time we were here, in working with our high schools, our 2 larger comprehensive high schools, they didn't have any, in fact, purposefully said, we're not going to move on any new course proposals this year. We're going to really focus on engaging our students in currently what we have as we move through this virtual world we were living in. So, but with that, we did have our TWE new course proposals the last time as we roll into high school and Hazelbrook 8th grade. And then in the interim, Creekside and Tualatin both said, hey, we've got a couple of awesome opportunities here that we'd like to make sure we get forward in the month of May here. And absolute thumbs up to say, yes, let's vet those and let's go through that process to see that we're ready to go. So appreciate them being here. We'll start off with Creekside Community High School. And I'll hand the microphone over to Russ, but we do have a Creekside a Creekside Community Action Squad that Russ will be talking about this evening. So Russ, welcome.
Thank you, Todd. And I'd love to introduce Heather Paulson, who's going to be our new coordinator of equity-centered instruction at Creekside next year, who's been helping me put this proposal together. So I want to start 3 years ago. The staff of what would become Creekside Community High School took a really close look at culturally responsive teaching. And in that, we identified all of the trademarks of learner dependence identities in our students. And if you're not familiar with that concept, it's basically learn dependence. You know, you find success by jumping through the hoops, by completing the assignments, by keeping your head down, by getting through. And when we talked about that and saw that, we came at that with some sadness to know that these students had so much more to offer the world and to themselves and to their families and to their communities. And so we set out with this purpose of how do we shift that with intention to learner independence, to identities filled with agency and a sense of possibility. So I asked my teachers, how are we going to do that? And we formed a structure that we call Collaboration for Innovation Teams. If you've been following our SIP plan, you've probably seen that in there over the years. And those folks named 4 potential areas. One was, we got to figure out how to develop deep relationships, community, and trust, not only between us and the kids, but between the kids and each other, so that they can truly and authentically collaborate, take risks, and step into their growth zone. The next one was project-based learning. And there's a lot to be offered there in terms of reorienting away from assignments and towards doing something. The next was individualized competency-based assessment, which shifts from a completion of assignments to how do we focus on the learning that happened? And not only that, how do we lead a process by which kids can reflect and think about their own learning and measure themselves and their own growth against all these things that we think are important? And then finally, and this is like the fourth and most important one for me, is social and emotional learning. How do we overcome obstacles when working with others in a meaningful way, solve problems, and face the music when it's time to make decisions together, despite those potential obstacles and conflicts? So we need socially and emotionally responsive environments and kids with skills. All of this led us to what we call the emerging model of learning at Creekside. And I think that Rowan said it great earlier. He said, in this process, he learned that he could do something that he didn't know was possible. And that's what we want for every student at Creekside, is to learn that lesson. So to put that into a structure so we can do it every week, all the time, and then work at a grassroots level together as a staff to see if we can figure out how to aim that high for every student at Creekside, we came up with this idea of Community Action Squad. So maybe I'll let Heather give a quick overview of what that is.
So, hi. Oh, is this on? Okay. I'm not used to being on a microphone. Also, this pitch of voice is not always to be amplified. So just let me know. Anyway, so we are wanting to have students be able to work collaboratively to identify and solve a problem. We really want them to be looking in their own communities for problems that feel authentic and relevant to them, and then to work with their team to research those problems and come up with some type of action. So that can be a school community, it can be their greater community, but it is looking at something that feels real and relevant and important to them, and asking them to go through the entire process from research to implementation. They would be engaging in this every Wednesday, and they would be working with a consistent group and a consistent teacher leader in their implementation of projects. And the idea is that these really come from student initiatives, and that teachers are there to coach, but they're not there to lead. That we are really looking at students to be making decisions collaboratively on what they would like to do, and that the teacher is there to support them, to help give them tools that they might need to execute or to reach their goals. That the teacher is not setting an agenda every day for the students, that the students are going to be working to set those agendas themselves. We feel like this is going to increase students' belief in themselves, their own agency, and also provide them with some real world skills that you really need once you get out of K-12 education, to be able to set your own goals, to create a plan, and be able to execute it.
Nice. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about assessment methodologies, because this one is just a little bit different than probably a lot of what comes across the new course proposal. This is a course, and it's a CTE course that fits into our community leadership pathway. And there are standards, as you can see in this proposal, that relate to the kind of 21st century skills, you might call them soft skills, social and emotional learning skills, that really are about how we work and how we move towards a goal ourselves and together. But in addition to that, we have an endless possibility for earning specific subject area credit across the requirements for Oregon graduation. We do that by having school-wide competency rubrics in all of these areas with standards attached that align to all the things that we need to align to, that we can have students collect a learning portfolio every quarter, and they'll be doing guided reflections throughout. They'll be choosing to focus on certain elements and areas of the project based on what they are interested in, but also what kind of credits they want to earn. Then they'll be able to sit down with a group of teachers to do a reflection conference, look at that collection of evidence, and then be able to decide what makes sense in terms of additional credit. We are doing this not as a requirement for graduation, but as an opportunity to go beyond what they'll be able to earn in all their other classes. So this will be sort of a benefit, a bonus. It's free credit, so to speak, if they want to go out there and earn it. So at this point, we'd love to hear any questions that you might have.
Not a question, but a comment, because I was loving, you're talking about building community with the advisory group, but to me, it was an opportunity community-wide, because there would be something like, hey, what are you working on? Oh, I'm working on this. Oh, that's really interesting. I don't know. Just seemed like a really wonderful opportunity, kind of like our elementary schools that do one school, one book, or something along those lines, where it's just kind of a conversation. Love it.
For that, now I would just add that doing my best with this. Yeah, I'm going to do my best. I would add that we have built into our schedule a 30-minute to talk about the kinds of projects that folks are working on, and to be able to cross-pollinate good ideas and ask for help from those people that have additional. We're also going to dedicate part of our our version of a school newspaper to sharing the good work that's happening across the school through this program.
So I'm curious if you have talked about this proposal with any of the current students and what ideas they might have for what a project in this curriculum might look like.
Sure. Yeah, actually, it was Eddie who came up with this name. So you know him. And yeah, we've been talking with students about this for sure. And we do have a couple of project ideas that have been kicked around. I think Heather can share one.
So we had talked a little bit about students' interest in houselessness and also in food insecurity. And so we had sort of briefly done some brainstorming around what students could do. And one approach to designing a project is to look at what resources you have available to you. Creekside is really, really lucky to be working with Superfresh and also to be housing a culinary arts program. And so that is a resource that we could lean on to kind of utilize and be able to address that problem. Students were, I think, enthusiastic about that idea. And then another approach would be to find community partners who are already doing really good work in areas that students are interested in, and then have students reach out to those organizations and think about how they can be excellent supporters of some good work that's already going on in the community.
Thank you both.
Can I make, I just wanted to make a comment. And you guys never cease to amaze me in your innovative ideas and just the observations you have around, how to improve our teaching of students. And so I just want to thank you for that, your reflectiveness. But I also, you answered my question, but one of my first questions was, it was kind of the name, Action Squad. I kind of thought, well, where's the rigor? Because it sounds kind of Action Squad, action figure. But thank you. You did answer my question around that, so I appreciate it. But this is sounds really great.
Right. One more group. Yeah. So thank you guys. We'll have Tualatin come up and then we'll refer back to the board. Yeah. Gwen. Hey. Hey. Hello. Hello. All right. So Gwen, I will hand this over to you. You've kind of seen the process here, but just give you an opportunity to share the outdoor explorations idea that's coming.
Yeah, I feel like I'm coming on the heels. There's a lot of synergy between the science curriculum, the concepts around the science curriculum you just heard, and the course at Creekside. Because Tualatin, this outdoor explorations course proposal is an elective course proposal for 7th and 8th grade students, no prerequisite. It's an opportunity for us to use our new makerspace to invite middle school students to explore math and science concepts within the context of real world problems that involve construction, engineering, sustainability, and also their own environment. So we're going to be looking to find community partners that'll come in to work with us, whether it be in the architecture field, construction, water treatment. In some ways, there's a CTE component where we are exposing our students to a lot of different careers, bring them into our school to think about how to do project and place-based learning within the context of our campus and our neighborhood. So obviously one of the things we'd like to do is build a garden. We're not going to do that overnight. We're going to start with inviting our students to think about the problem of design of a garden in our space here and have them work in teams to construct designs that we will consider. And that might be the first stage of a course like this. But other units that might involve is think about building your own composting and how that would work. And in the process, it's a lot of fun, hands-on learning, activating science, math, and engineering concepts in real world ways. We're going to give them opportunity to use the equipment in the makerspace and build confidence around using that to build and construct together and share ideas. So that is what Quality Outdoor Explorations is about. It is grounded in the next generation science standards, as we were discussing with the science curriculum, and it fills in a suite of elective classes that we have around introducing students to engineering and design concepts at the middle school level. Yeah, any questions on that? Want to come dig in the dirt with us?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, all right. Come on over,
I
Jill.
would be happy to. I love this idea. I want to take this class. I wish this class had been offered when I was in middle school. And yeah, I'll be one of your parents.
I'm actually very serious. You can come play with us.
I love to dig in the dirt. So, yeah. And the idea of worm composting is just.
Oh yeah, there's going to be worms.
It just made me think that I guess we had some flooding type issues out here. I'm looking at Director Bernard. Wasn't there some flooding here at Quality?
Yes, these students are going to analyze that real world problem, and we're going to bring in Bernard, and we're going to solve it together.
That is exactly what I was picturing.
I just wanted to say thank you for being here and presenting this. This is the type of course that I think has the ability to help students potential career and feel passionate. It's like, we talked about this at a board meeting about women in STEM and how it takes experiential opportunities sometimes for people to imagine themselves in a certain path. And that's why I find this so exciting. So thank you for being here to present it.
Emily, are you going to come back to Quality and dig in the dirt with us?
Yes,
yeah.
definitely. But this reminds me of there was a girl in my sophomore year class, and she really wanted for us to be able to turn some of our lunch food into compost. And I think she goes to Creekside now, but I would love to see this continue into high school because it would be great. We eat so much, we waste so much as well. So I'm really glad that this is a thing.
Thank you.
I move that the Tigard-Tualatin School Board approve the following new course at Quality Middle School, Outdoor Explorations, and the following new course at Creekside Community High School, Creekside Community Action Squad, as presented.
I second.
Motion was made and seconded to approve new courses as presented. Any further discussion? Just to thank you, Gwen, as well. I didn't get a chance to say that. And just outstanding creative courses to bring forward. So we'll excuse you, Todd, for being late. I'm sorry. Oh no. Well, they can walk back, and we'll vote. We'll be efficient here as we try to wrap up. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed. Motion carries. And with that, we will move to Director Bernard, redefining learning and technology purchase. And welcome Dr. McCall and Director Bernard.
I brought a friend so that we could transition to the next topic very smoothly.
So I don't want to interrupt you in 7 minutes. I'm going to make a motion to extend the meeting to 10 o'clock.
But I think after 9, you have to do it after 9:30.
No, we have it says we do it at 9:30. So I'm extending it to 10, even though the agenda says 10. We still have to take a vote on it.
Something you guys can look up in Boardmanship 101, but I do think it's 9:30 and you're supposed to extend it. So on that, I think a motion was made to extend the meeting to 10 o'clock. Do I have a second? Motion was made and seconded to extend the meeting till 10 o'clock. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Good evening, Board Chair Wolf, members of the board. This is my third visit and final one this year to request for approval for purchasing with bond funds. I came before for some student devices, and this one is for the program labs. And so we don't have labs at our elementary schools anymore. We have labs that are associated with classes in our secondary schools. And so the purchase request tonight with bond funds specifically is for our middle school programs. Bayard Lions would be the recipient that you met earlier here at Tualatin, and we have a program lab at both the other middle schools as well. Additionally, once a year, because we have landed on a process for purchasing equipment so that we can try to right size both the equipment and get purchasing efficiencies, we buy once a year. And so we have our IT warehouse, and we stock our warehouse in the spring, and we ask people to hold their funds to try to make purchases in the spring or estimate what they might do for the next year. So both for support and for rollout efficiencies, we also have some items in the purchase request tonight that would go into our warehouse. We have some Measure 98 funds that are being requested to be used. We've got some Title I dollars, and teachers can also buy with their PEF. And so from time to time, they buy some iPads or something like that out of the warehouse. So it's a combination of devices that I don't know what happened with the Apple quote. And this year, amongst all years, Apple decided in their infinite wisdom to put colors with their iMacs. So there are an odd number, as Director Emerson noticed, that there's not an even number of iMacs because some are going into the warehouse, and there are a variety of colors. So it sounded very exciting to our middle school staff. So we were trying to appease the rainbow of colors in our labs. Are there any questions that you may have around the purchase or what's on the list there?
I move that the Tigard-Tualatin School District Board approve purchase of program lab and computer purchases with district funds, including $194,217 in 2017 bond funds, and authorize the district superintendent or CFO to sign the purchase order to Apple Inc. in an amount not to exceed $420,869 as submitted.
Motion was made and seconded to adopt the motion as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will move quickly into our K-12 online school proposal. Dr. Lisa McCall and Director Bernard, I'm thinking.
Good evening, Board Chair Wolf, Vice Chair Bowman, board members, and student reps. So tonight, this is a follow-up from our presentation at the last board meeting. And so what we're here to discuss is our proposal for a K through 12 virtual academy for TTSD. Next slide, Patty. And the why. So we have learned a lot during this COVID pandemic. And we have tried very hard to be curious about the lived experiences of our students and our families. And what this has shown us is that some of our families in the fall went to other various online schools, a little bit, about 203 of them. And then in the spring, 5,100 of our students remain in CDL. And so we were curious, we surveyed families in April, and 604 of those families, based on a survey, requested an online option for the upcoming school year. And so really the why is that to give our families an option to get their students online while keeping our students in TTSD, and that's the purpose of listing up an online school. And so Director Bernard is going to share a little bit about the data.
Next slide, please, Patty. Last board meeting, there was some conversation, some questions around some of the data and the students that would potentially be attending the online virtual academy, as we are leaning towards calling it. And so the data that I'm showing here is based on the hypothesis that of those families that were surveyed that responded, that said, yes, we would like to come and do an online presence, we were able to connect that with the students that potentially could be coming. So that was also part of the data that I showed last time, how of those families that indicated they would like to come this fall, it was pretty similar demographically, language, race, ethnicity, and grade to what our current comprehensive schools look like. So next slide, please, Patty. So I took a high school, I believe it was Tigard High. Actually, no, this is both high schools. So if all the families that said they would like their kids to come this fall continued to remain, want to stay online, this is the grades of each of the individual classes that those kids are taking. So one of the concerns we had is what students would be attracting. And it appears the data that's shown from the students at their grades is it seems to be that most of these kids are being successful online. By and large, they're A's and B's. The NG is the group that we didn't do F's, so no grade, or they were extended some time to be able to finish up their courses. So by and large, these were not students that were not being successful online at our high school. So is it a guarantee? Absolutely not. Is it a window of the response to the families that were looking for this type of resource come this fall anyway? It's a bit of a window. Next slide, please. And then similarly, taking a look at the attendance, specifically at Tigard High, there was 92 students associated with the families that responded. And with our current definition of chronic absenteeism, 4 of those 92 would have been chronically absent, and they were across 2 families. So they were siblings. So it gives us an opportunity to knock on the door and say, you wanted to stay online. What is it that didn't work this year? Was it network connectivity? Was it how, what was it that didn't work? So there was some kind of pattern that made it a little bit easier to follow up on. So that and as Dr. McCall will be discussing, the supports that we would have in a comprehensive online school would be able to help those families in particular.
Next slide. So here's our proposal for a comprehensive online school. So it would be for grades K through 12. The bell schedule would mimic our current bell scale at each level. And again, back to questions that Director Bowman mentioned about like what kind of supports will students get. That would be similar to the supports that our students receive in brick and mortar. What that means is that if a student is struggling, teachers assess, they get together, they look at the data, they communicate with the families, and they adjust and provide what we call multi-tiered systems of support. And so that would also exist in the online school. Students who need counseling services would receive that, as well as SPED services, EL services, and differentiation based on grade and level. Next slide. And so talk a little bit about staffing. What would it take to lift up a virtual academy? Well, it would be similar to staffing an elementary school with about 600 students. It would require an admin, a principal, and about 24 teachers if we're going to target or if we're going to provide enrollment for at least 650 students, it would require about 24 teachers. Support counseling from our existing staff, and you might ask the question, so who are those teachers? well, we, those teachers would be existing teachers in TTSD, and we already have, we plan to survey interest from our current teachers if they are interested in teaching online. Next slide. So here are the next steps upon board approval. So we have an application that we included in the board packet that we would submit to ODE. And then we would post positions for a principal and a secretary. We have a timeline for communication, and that is communicating with our staff, surveying our teaching staff, as well as putting it in our TTSD community newsletter. And then we have a plan to open registration and enrollment. In addition to that, we will provide an information night for families. And that concludes our presentation for our TTSD Virtual Academy proposal. Thank you.
Thing. Is this one on? Okay. So I just wanted to thank you both. I feel like you were very responsive to the comments and concerns from the last meeting. So I will support the proposal. I wanted to say that the older the student gets, the less nervous I am about virtual. I am worried about having a lot of students choosing an elementary option that may or may not be best for them, full virtual. So I guess my ask is that if we could have a report in a year and review comparing outcomes from this school across grade levels, I think that would just be a helpful thing for us to be able to make sure we're on the right track.
Absolutely. It's already in the work. We've already planned for that.
Excellent.
In fact, if I could request that we have not just an end of year, but also a mid-year, how are things going? What are the problems we're running into? What are the solutions we're using to overcome those? That sort of a report.
See Susan typing away right now, those requests.
And then I just have a few questions. So if the student is part of the online school, then would they still be connected to another school for things like if they're graduating, would they walk with the same students in their class and certain things like that? Would they be connected or would it kind of be separate?
That is an excellent question. And through the application process with the Oregon Department of Education, and what we've learned from our neighboring districts like Hillsborough and Beaverton, when you get an ID from Oregon Department of Education, typically what happens is you get a diploma from the online school. Now, as far as participating in some, you could say extracurricular activities, or yes, that would be possible at the secondary level.
So I just want to make sure that the paperwork form has been updated to indicate that it will be a K-12, not a K-8, and that
It
a
has.
diploma will be awarded.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a couple quick questions. One is, staff, are they going to be working from home, or are they going to be, I'm just curious if they're going to be in a building someplace, or what's the thoughts there?
Well, certainly our staff, some of our staff who are in CDL, they're working from home, but some of them feel comfortable coming into the building. So I'm imagining that could be the case as well.
So that hasn't really been decided whether it's going to be like a physical location.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering, like, when the kids come in for supports and stuff, where do they go? I mean, do they go to their school they would have gone to if they hadn't chosen? Is that you got nodding yes? There's not going to be a separate location for virtual kids. They're just going to be
No.
integrated into the current services.
That is correct.
Okay. And the second question I have is this application, is this considered a pilot, or are you going to kind of take it 1 year at a time based on your assessment next year? Or is this intended long-term? You just don't know. I'm just curious.
Again, the reason to assess how it's going is kind of like when we use improvement science. We plan, we do, we study, and we act. So, and adjust as well. So we anticipate at least 2 years, but again, that's why we assess and see what we need to do to make any changes necessary.
All right. Well, thank you. It's been great that we can make something out of learn what we've learned this year and apply it to something new. So I'm excited to see what happens. So I want to go to that board meeting.
Another question I wanted to ask is the 650 student capacity, is that locked in once we submit the application, or is that up to us if we want to lower or raise that number year after year?
It is up to us. There is a tipping point, hence the boundary calculator, that there's a impact on the other schools depending on when you hit a threshold of percent when you're pulling students from other schools. So it depends on how and if the school grows and if we're pulling kids back into the district that left or if we're pulling them out of a current school. But there is no hard cap on the school as it stands.
Just one more quick question, because you just said boundary calculator. Are we using forecast 5 for that? Is that forecast 5?
No, but I'm sure David would love to
Yeah, I
help
was
me with something
yes,
like
for
that.
Alberta Rider. I was just curious if we were already.
I thought that was going to be a response. So I just a comment, just appreciate that you all have been so thoughtful in this application, just listening to other districts with the same concern, but not necessarily having the ability to create this opportunity for their students and genuinely concerned about where they will head in the fall. So, and love that they can still connect to their homeschool, if you will, if they want to do extracurricular or engage in that way, but meet their needs as a family and a student. So, and like Vice Chair Bowman said, appreciated seeing the grades and a sense of understanding about who would likely be those students. So thanks to both of you. And if there's no other questions, I'll take a motion.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, it does.
Nope,
I
got
move
it.
that the Tigard-Tualatin School District Board of Directors approve submission of an application to the Oregon Department of Education to create the TTSD K-12 Virtual Academy and upon approval to implement and open the TTSD K-12 Virtual Academy in fall of 21.
I second.
Motion was made and seconded to accept the application for online school was presented. Any further discussion?
I'm just really excited about the opportunity this gives to families that are nervous about bringing their kids back into the buildings. I think it's really nice that we can provide.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both. And we will now move to pre-K curriculum purchase update, Dr. McCall and crew.
Good evening again. And so I have with me here is early learning team, Susan Saukihill and Christina Kurtz. And we are going to share with you our recommendation for an early learning curriculum. Next slide, Patty. So about a year ago, the fall of 2019, actually my first year in TTSD, we convened a work group to look at pre-K curriculum and content areas, literacy, math, STEAM, social and emotional learning, with the explicit lens of on culturally responsive instruction, as well as the needs of dual language learners. And so based on that collaborative work, we're going to make recommendations for curriculum to be adopted. And just want to share how collaborative that process was. Next slide. So we convened and sought out not only teachers at the elementary level, but also support staff, as well as each of the 10 elementary school principals, along with other district staff, because what we've learned through a process is that you only see a little bit of the area that you're close to. So in order to get a more comprehensive understanding of the needs of our littles is that we need to seek out that collaboration, and this team did it over a year. And based on that collaboration, we wanted to next slide. We really wanted to focus on the importance of aligning our pre-K to third grade. And based on research, we know the high leverage move of having that alignment brings us closer to narrowing the academic gaps and or opportunity gaps for our littles. And so here, Susan will talk a little bit more about that alignment and the criteria.
So based on early learning research, we started by developing a set of criteria for an effective pre-K curriculum. Next slide, please. For an effective pre-K curriculum in Tigard-Tualatin. We quickly realized that there are a number of great pre-K curriculum that would meet a lot of these criteria. So we started with the two hardest. Next slide, please. Which were having research-based demonstrated academic outcomes and articulated alignment pre-K through 3. Now we want to emphasize that pre-K itself has great outcomes. Students who have a pre-K experience are less likely to use special education services, more likely to graduate, less likely to use substances, more likely to have economic stability when they're adults. Really wonderful long-term outcomes. In addition to that, we were looking for short-term academic outcomes that would support us towards our district goal of every student reading by 3rd grade. So thankfully, there are organizations who've done much of this work for us. Next slide, please. One of them being the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center, who evaluated evidence on the major pre-K curriculum. There was no evidence on many of the curriculum that we would normally have considered. That doesn't mean that they weren't effective. In many cases, it just meant that the studies hadn't been done on a large scale. Next slide, please. There was some evidence for curriculum, and there was moderate evidence for opening the world of learning, which is OWL. OWL does not appear to be currently supported. We couldn't even actually find a place to purchase it. So that was kind of out of the running. Moving on to math, the National Center on Quality Teaching and Learning evaluates pre-K math curriculum. They found solid, high-quality evidence based on large-scale research studies with similar populations to our priority population for pre-K mathematics curriculum, which again did not appear to be well supported. And next slide, please. And building blocks, which is very active and very well supported by McGraw-Hill. Next slide, please. And it has very good research behind it, including research done in the Boston area with their early pre-K curriculum that showed quite good outcomes. Next slide, please. There was one very new curriculum that was interesting to us called Connect for Learning. It was developed by national experts, and it was an integrated literacy, math, science, and an SEL curriculum. There were small pilot studies that looked quite promising. So we did investigate that further and look at the curriculum in a hands-on way. Next slide, please. And the other really nice opportunity is the TWIG, which is our K-5 adopted science curriculum, very much hands-on, very pre-K oriented, has a pre-K version. Their units align really nicely to what you find in the pre-K classroom. There's storm chasers and ocean adventures and space exploration, So we like that nice potential synergy. Next slide, please. So we really ended up looking at two options. One was Connect for Learning, which is kind of all in one curriculum. And one is what we're calling Twig Plus, which is using Twig for science and STEM and using the unit structure to build out language and literacy kind of in a way that's really natural in a pre-K classroom, because you don't just teach a literacy block, you infuse it throughout the day, using building blocks for math, and continuing with our current social and emotional learning programs, and exploring another one that we're really interested in, which we'll talk about later. But we did a pros cons list. Next slide, please. Connect for Learning had some really highly promising pilot studies. We like that it supported inquiry. Pilot studies with dual language learners were very promising. The cons were that there were only pilot studies. It wouldn't articulate with anything we were offering K-5. And some classrooms have 3 and 4-year. Our preschool promise classroom has 3 and 4-year-olds, so they would have had the same curriculum twice because it's pretty prescriptive. We didn't find it as strong in SEL as we would have wanted. And if it's done to fidelity, it takes up a lot of the 2.5-hour pre-K session. And it didn't give us as much room for SEL as we would have wanted. When we looked at Twig, it articulates nicely, of course, with our K-5 science. It allows a lot of flexibility. We could build out our literacy curriculum based on journeys and early reading intervention, both of which we're already using. They could both be scaffolding, and it would allow more time for social and emotional learning, which we thought was really important. The cons were that there aren't yet effectiveness studies on Twig, and we'd be building our own literacy curriculum. We then looked at opportunities for alignment. Next slide, please. And as you can see, there were lots more opportunities for alignment with the Twig Plus option. So next slide, please. So on balance, considering the pros and cons and the alignment possibilities, the group is recommending the Twig Plus option. What this would mean, next slide, please, would be purchasing the Twig curriculum for pre-K at a cost of about $11,000. We would build out our own language and literacy curriculum, which we've got TOSAs on board and interested in leading. We would purchase building blocks for math at the cost of about $10,000. And we would use our current social and emotional learning resources and look at adding some more. I'm going to hand over to Christina to talk about how we're going to implement.
So immediately, starting this month, we will, with a keen eye on alignment in our kindergarten classroom work, we are currently building out a literacy sequence and pacing using our existing resources, journeys, and ERI. Oh, sorry, Patty, can you please advance the slide? And while we're doing this work, we are referencing the Oregon Early Learning and Kindergarten Guidelines, which is really a guidepost for most of our work. In pre-service this August, we will have our pre-K team receive PD on building blocks and meet to put the final touches on the literacy rollout. And our literacy especially will need support from our new pre-K instructional coach, and we'll use the whole of next year to continue building it out with our pre-K team that includes district literacy specialists and pre-K teachers. Can you please advance a slide? So we have already visited LEAP in action. LEAP is Learning Experiences, an alternative program for preschoolers and parents. In practice, and we are inspired to immediately and have been implementing several key elements in our pre-K classes. It's explicit instruction on social interactions most successful when coached and used peer-to-peer. We'd like to take more staff to see it in practice and would like to revisit the PPS and David Douglas classrooms. There are exciting implications for using this practice and alignment pre-K through 5. Next slide, please. We'd also like to see SEAL Sobrato. SEAL is Sobrato Early Academic Language Program. We'd like to see it likely in the Bay Area. Our hope is to take away key strategies that we can implement in our work across all our pre-Ks, including in our two-way immersion bilingual pre-K. It is, however, a very expensive curriculum coaching model, so we plan to build a relationship with this work that will show us how to implement pieces such as what we've done with LEAP to date. Next slide, please. Yeah. And we were planning to visit Boston in April of 2020. So what we hope to do moving forward is to reschedule that trip so that we can see their early learning classrooms with an eye again on their alignment work specifically.
So that brings us to the end of our presentation. And just as a reminder, as we are a pre-K to 12 district, as we continue to expand our preschool classrooms, in addition to the ones in the 2 high schools as well. So is there any questions for us? Last slide.
So I have one question. So you're asking for about 11,000 for the science and about 10,000 for the math. And then you say that the language literacy will be done in-house. Is there no intrinsic cost to having the staff do that? Are they doing it on extended contract or just in their spare time?
They will be doing it on extended contract. We have some professional development funds that we were unable to use this year in the ways that we planned. So we would redeploy them for this effort.
So then that's no additional dollars. It's just redistributing dollars that we had already budgeted.
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for answering my questions on email. I have to say I was fairly ignorant about curriculum for preschoolers because I pretty much think they learn how to behave and and count and stuff. So thank you for your patience in asking my question.
Thank you for asking.
I move that we approve the adoption and purchase of the Twig Science Next Gen for pre-kindergarten and McGraw-Hill building blocks curriculum for use in the TTSD pre-K classrooms as presented.
Motion was made and seconded to approve the purchase of the curriculums as presented. Any further discussion? Want to thank you all. And Susan, I think I haven't said anything. I think you're retiring here shortly. And I just can't thank you enough for all the years and amazing service that you have done. So I just wanted to honor you and take a second to thank you for everything. So with that, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. Okay, our last item on the agenda, and I will, we as a board, I think will be succinct in our evaluation of our superintendent, but I'm not going to cut it short to 3 minutes for the sake of a time. And so I'd like to extend the meeting so we can truly have a conversation without that interruption.
I propose that we extend the meeting to 10:15.
Second. Motion was made and extended, seconded to extend the meeting to 10:15. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So the last item on the action agenda is the superintendent's evaluation. And this process, I will just brief framing. Dr. Wiki Smith is evaluated on 5 standards for superintendent around visionary leadership, policy governance, communications, community relations, management of resource personnel, and instructional leadership. Along with that, Dr. Wiki Smith set superintendent goals for this year, as with everything unique and truly focused on COVID-19, Ready School, Safe Learners framework from ODE, and really how she modeled the year. The process for getting feedback was a 360 survey and feedback from her, I think her peers, cabinet, students, and then of course the board evaluated directly on all 5 standards. And then as the evaluation was presented in the board book is our summary of her performance. So, so first, and I know all of you will be sharing your personal thoughts, but Dr. Ricky Smith, we just can't thank you enough. I'm just going to slide back for a second. This year, yeah, you know, no one could have anticipated the length, the amount of decision-making changes, the requirements to continue instruction in multi-modes with constant change of direction, a continued equity lens on the work that we found as priorities a year ago, and you stayed true to that and how we continue forward with that work. 12,000 students with parents with different lenses, different needs on how we communicate, how we connect, how we educate, and doing it all with screen in front of our face. And even just sitting here tonight, I mean, just gave me a sense of appreciation with the lack of connection and leading through that. So I just, as an overall performance, we found you exemplary. And we want to thank you for your service. Cabinet, I can't say that to Dr. Sue without looking to all of you and just taking a moment to say thank you. Because this district would not have moved forward without you. And so I know that that's her job to tell you that, but I think on behalf of the board, I just have to take a moment to thank you all as well. But I think just on a couple highlights, and then I'll stop because I'll let the rest of the board share. You just never stopped advocating for district, for students statewide. We were fortunate with your public health background to really dig deep into the science, really understand the impact, and your care and concern absolutely for students and their instruction and their safety, but for staff. And I think you held that true to your heart. And this was not an easy year. I did not envy any superintendent this year. And I just wanted to say thank you. And I'm just going to stop because the evaluation is in the board book and I just want to give opportunities for fellow board members to share. So thank you for this year.
So can I go see you right now? I also want to second that. And gosh, I mean, and what Andrew was talking about this year, and I thought, oh yeah, I forgot about the fires. I mean, you think about all we've been through this last year. I mean, it's crazy. And anyway, I just want to thank you because you always had grace. And what I appreciate about you is you know, despite like all these things happening, you always tried to look at the positives and try to create vision for everybody in a positive attitude, which is hard to do when you get beaten down. So I want to thank you for that, your vision and your enthusiasm, despite just overwhelming circumstances, and the grace in which you handled, you know, difficult things, and also your ability to you listen and you receive you get feedback and you act upon it. And I appreciate you bringing the rapid cycle, which I'm a huge fan of. So I can't thank you enough, and I echo what Maureen said about the cabinet. So thanks to all of you. And it feels like we've been through kind of shared a foxhole together this year.
This will be hard. Maureen took the advocacy one, but that was something that I definitely noticed that anytime there was a opportunity to let our legislators know at the federal level, state level, county level, city level, If there was something our students needed or our teachers needed, you were writing those letters and sending them off. I definitely appreciate all of that work. Appreciate all the communications that were so regular and so complete. Again, that overlaps with some of our. Wow. Cabinet members. But at the beginning of the year, when we said, get us through ready school, safe learners, oh my God. I'm gonna miss this.
Because it's been so much fun.
It has. But what I was going to say is that we said get us through the year, and that was definitely the highest level goal. But as we had meetings, I was so amazed how the staff was still doing all of the other things that needed to happen to keep that work going and not just say we're going to put it on hold for a year. Not to mention all the planning for next year, which had just as many questions involved as this year of will we wear masks? Can we do it? Will it happen? I appreciated your responses to the many emails we received, that you viewed them as opportunities. That is not how I viewed many of them, but you did. I totally appreciate that ability. The other thing that I want to call out, and I don't remember when we called it out or not, but the fact that our district did not make headlines this year with the threat of a strike, the idea of a strike, or anything less than, was nothing short of amazing, because it was just such a difficult year where nobody could agree on anything. We all had different opinions on everything. And you were able to talk through the issues and collaboratively get to some solutions that everybody could live with. And I really appreciate not making headlines for that. Oh. And I will definitely miss this. Thank you.
So the most important job the school board does is hire the superintendent. The budget and the policy falls into place under that when we've got the right person at the helm. And 3 years ago, we went through an excruciating process to find a superintendent. And there were times when I knew the four of us thought we were never going to find anybody. And then we found you. And I knew at the time you were the right superintendent for this district. And with each year, I've become even more sure. And after having gone through a year like we've been through, I cannot imagine how we would have made it with anybody else. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart for being so good for our students, so good for our teachers, so good for our community at a time when nothing was good.
I would echo much of what my colleagues have said, but I wanted to add a couple things myself. I think on a broader level, I first just wanted to appreciate the, I think, sober view that you have brought to, I just so appreciated the reflection this year of we didn't meet this goal. we did meet this goal. We partially met this goal. And saying, here's what we're going to do next year. And walking into your office last week and saying, here's our goal for next year already. We're not even there yet. And I just see your laser focus on that. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And then a couple of specific items. Policy and governance was mentioned. I do think, you know, you're a phenomenal superintendent when it comes to advocacy, but there's more to policy and governance than just that, as you know. And what this board has done on a couple of different occasions this year is created policies that don't exist in other districts. So you couldn't call a colleague and say, how do you guys do your hate speech and bias incidents policy? Our new equity policy is not going to be something that in the superintendent affinity groups, you'll be able to compare notes on. And you've never once asked us to slow down. And in fact, you've said, let's speed it up on several occasions. And I think that matters a great deal. I also wanted to acknowledge in the policy and governance section that your colleagues have acknowledged your skills here and elevated you to the AASA committee, which is the superintendent's group, which I think is very exciting. And then a final note that I wanted to mention, because I think it's important, is the level of, and it was alluded to in other comments, but I'll be more direct. There are not very many women superintendents in Oregon. And we've had discussions about how that number might actually be declining. And we saw over the last year in particular why that might be. And I think about some of the public comments, including the frequent flyers who are consistently demeaning and condescending and sexist. And your response has never been anything but respect to those people, which I have a lot of admiration for. And I also feel some guilt as a board because, as we've said before, in any other professional context, that would not be tolerated. It would be sexual harassment. And yet it is a regular occurrence in your role. So the way that you are able to confront that and as Director Emerson noted, treat it as an opportunity is really profound. And I think it reflects very well on our district, the way that you interact with our patrons. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share and just say thank you. And I'm very excited about the next 2 years that I'll have to work with you on this board and appreciate all you did over the last year.
And I just also, I wanted to say thank you just because it's been great getting to be able to meet on a monthly basis. As I said before, I was able to learn the difference between policy and AR, and there are many things like that, but also when Emily or I, when Andy was with us, if we wanted to make any changes in the district or we wanted to get any support, you were very helpful with that. And then it was always just a great process to be able to say, oh, well, this is a problem that students have brought up to me, or I've noticed this. And it was immediately, oh, how can we address that? Who should I talk to? And so that was always a really great process and something that I didn't really think would happen, but it turned out to be great. So thank you for all of your work with that.
Okay. I think part of working with Dr. Ricky Smith is she is so reassuring. And throughout the whole year, when I was talking to students, I was always reassured and by the fact that she has this background in public health. And I always felt like I had a lot of trust, and students had a lot of trust in the fact that we had somebody who knew the data and who could read it and who could apply it correctly to our district. And throughout all the major challenges that we faced this year, I was always really relieved by the communication that you gave to us, which was always really clear and understandable. And recently we had a resolution about our budget, and you explained it to us so clearly in the budget and in our meeting. And it makes me so appreciative of the fact because we get to engage in community and community relations, and it really shows to me that you value like the I don't want to repeat words, but it really makes it clear that you really value that the community knows they can make changes and communicate to the board. So thank you so much for that. And I'm so glad I get to work with you for another year.
Thank you all. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the first man over there. And Jeff, and thank you. I can't imagine the level of support, and what a crazy year to be a partner in this experience, and so many things that Ben just called out and acknowledged. I mean, anyway, just appreciate you and thank you, and appreciate Sharon saying, hey, let's do a shout out to Jeff for sure, because just really grateful to have her back and be there as a support in a just hellacious year. So I think with that, Dr. Ricky Smith, you're certainly welcome to say something if you. And Patty, you too. I leaned a cabinet and I didn't do a backbend to you. So thank you for your support.
I want to say thank you once again to the board. You are only as good a leader as the support system that you have. And the fact that you have stood united and strong through not just this year, but the last 2 years as well, has helped us get to where we are today, which is back in person. And we are one of the few boards that are meeting in person in the state at this point in time. So thank you. Thank you for your steadfastness. Thank you for your direction. Thank you for asking me critical questions that make me think and either affirm my beliefs or cause me to reflect further and make sure that I'm making the right decision. I cannot say enough to the cabinet that is assembled here. They have seen me at my best and seen me at my worst in the last 14 months. Early on, when it was clear that we were in this for the long haul, I said to my spouse, this will either go to hell quickly or we'll dig down deep. And we dug down deep and were able to produce some things that you have already identified. I have a cartoon that I inherited from my father, who was a state and then private university president. And it is an old Far Side cartoon that shows a man pushing a wheelbarrow through hell, and two devils looking at each other and looking at him and saying to each other, I don't think we're getting through to this guy. And that is how this year has felt, is that bring it, all right? We're going to make it through because I know the quality and the tenacity and the grit of this community, and I know how deeply they care. And at the end of the day, for me, it is and always will be about our students first. So thank you for the opportunity to serve. It continues, even in the midst of all of this, to be an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
We still have extended public comment. We need to extend the meeting, but public comment is in person. And so I want to just raise your hand if you're, so okay, 2. Okay, so then we need to extend the meeting.
I move to extend the meeting to 10:45.
Motion was made and seconded to extend the meeting until 10:45. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And
I also move to approve the superintendent evaluation as presented.
Evaluation is presented. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And now we will go back to public comments. And if the two of you would like to come forward, and Dr. Bowman, I'll, well, actually, Katie, and I'm sorry, I'll just have you introduce yourself. You've been signed up to. Then I'll give it to Vice Chair Bowman because I don't have that readily.
Okay. We will just read through the list to ensure if anyone's here who would like to present public comment that they have that ability. So Caroline Frasiris, Kevin Robinson, Katie McKee.
Oh, I think I've got it. My name is Katie McKee. I'm a social studies teacher at Tigard High School. I wanted to address the concern that was raised by the inflammatory article that has appeared in the online publication called City Journal. The author asserts that we are working on a Marxist agenda to influence our children. What he opposes is the development of our district-wide emphasis on equity, where we intentionally are working to increase awareness and instruction at all grade levels about both the history and current situations involving women, people of color, religious minorities, sexual minorities, and others who have traditionally been left out of our lessons. As a teacher with a degree in social science and graduate studies in history and social science economics, I can say that we as American educators have primarily taught the history of white European men and their descendants, with a periodic footnote about other regions and other peoples. If I may, allow me to list just 4 representative examples. As a white female of Northern European descent, I was taught about people of European descent, including my own ancestors, who traveled across the North American continent and settled the American West. But I was not taught about the cultures of the people who already lived here and how their cultures were disrupted and eventually erased in what was politely called assimilation. As a district, we have followed a curriculum that has not included in-depth lessons of African nations and cultures, which results in my students whose families fled the civil war in Somalia may be hearing about it from their family members, but they and the rest of my students do not hear about it in the classroom. Right now, there's an uneasy ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinians, but most districts do not teach about the Six-Day War and the seizure of the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights. So students have no background to draw upon when they hear the reports on the news. And then today, after a lesson about LGBTQ+ issues and the leadership of Harvey Milk, one of my senior students asked, why were we not taught about this before now? As a social scientist, it's very important to me that those who are alarmed by the accusations made by the author and the nameless teacher he says he talked to would instead take some time and talk to real social studies teachers and other educators who are willing to go on record about what we want to accomplish with our emphasis on equity. We are not engaged in promoting a Marxist blueprint for erasing white history. Rather, we want to expand our students' exposure to a wide range of people's experiences. They want to learn, and we owe it to them to teach them as much as possible, rather than limiting the lessons to the history of white Europeans and their descendants. There are so many more people out there, and our students need to know their stories as well.
Thank you, Katie. Next, Caleb Walksmith. Perfect. Caleb has submitted written comments that will be forwarded to the board. Brian or Katie Foth. Brian submitted an email that will be forwarded to the board. Sarah Joy Brown.
So I think this is on. I have a unique family situation. I have 4 kids, ages 18, 12, 8, and 5. So I have spanned all grade levels of this beautiful district. I have had the privilege of interacting with staff from 6 of our schools, including various staff in the special education departments of 3 schools, 1 high school and 2 elementary schools, as well as the teachers at the preschool level. I have been so incredibly impressed by every staff member I've met. I'm very grateful for their impact on my children's lives. While I am grateful for the various staff at our schools, I want to challenge
a few things that I feel have been glossed over and a few things even that were said tonight. I received an email about a week and a half ago that greatly saddened me. It was that there was finally going to be an affinity meeting for families of children who are in special ed. I couldn't even attend the one affinity group that was available to me this year, the one meeting of it, because my son had a baseball game and my husband happened to be out of town. It is my understanding that there have been affinity meetings for other groups that have been taking place at least all year, if not before. I am not saying that those affinity groups need to stop, or even that the equity work that you are wanting to do needs to stop. What I am saying is, where did the children with special needs fit in? You're calling it education equity, but the children with special needs are being left behind. You are looking so hard at race that you are not including the children with special needs. One of the things mentioned here tonight was the idea of reaching out to families on the margins. The only time that I am aware of an email or any communication going out to special education families as a whole for the district this year was a survey sent out in December asking about our desire for affinity groups. And once we had responded, we were told that because of the transition to in-person learning, the affinity group was not going to happen. I appreciate that this year presented so many different challenges for everybody. I'm not saying that that transition was not valuable. I just think that we are losing some focus on others that are marginalized as well.
Thank you. The last person signed up is Taylor Kevin. We have her written comments. Perfect. Okay.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bowman. And I believe that those that were written comments will be included in our record for this evening. So with that, I think we have come to the conclusion of our agenda this evening. And so we'll adjourn, and truly thank you all for hanging in there for the final